Chapter 557. After putting these things away, Su Len checked the divinity crystals that he had just obtained. There were 2 divinity crystals this time. The one in Sullen's hand had about 8 points of divinity. The one in Hathaway's hand should be about the same as the one in his hand. It added up to 16 points of divinity. This abomination had more divinity than many demigods. This was because the great Arcanist had sealed it so that it was not completely born. There was still a part of the divinity in the god's body that had not been absorbed by it. If this abomination broke the seal and absorbed all the divinity, its divinity would probably reach the level of a weak god. Of course, with more divinity, the abomination's strength would also increase. By then, it would be Sullen's turn to be unlucky. Su Len did not mind having more divinity. Although he did not intend to walk the path of a god, it was still good to use divinity to increase his strength. In fact, if Su Len was willing to become a god, he could establish a church and preach. Of course, at this time, he could only be called a false god. The minimum requirement to become a god was to have 30 points of divinity, which was the level of a weak god. At the same time, he needed to master the power of rules and condense it into a divine personality. Su Len was still a little short of this. He could condense the divine personality of the Thunder God. As for the clergy, there were many choices. If Su Len chose to become a god, it could be done in about 10 or 20 years. However, he would be trapped in this universe of the crystal wall system and could not go to other crystal wall systems. Although gods were powerful, there were many restrictions. As a god, he had to fulfill the obligations of his clergy. At the same time, he could not leave the god's kingdom at will. If it was only for 180 years, he could consider it. The key was that as long as he was a god, he had to fulfill this job. This was also the reason why the ancient gods who were tired of it gave their clergy to their descendants or other successors. After becoming a god, Su Len still needed to choose a side. With his current strength, a god with weak divine power could only be regarded as a small role among the gods. He could be regarded as a god under other gods. In the Pantheon Temple, his seat was also the last few. In order to become a big shot or a main god in a god system, one had to be at least mid-level divine power. As for those large god systems, such as the main gods of the Elven god system, they must be at the level of great divine power. The most powerful gods in the Pantheon Temple were great divine powers. The ancient god of death, Jurgil, and Mother Gaia were at this level, but they had already retired. After becoming a god, he would gain allies and enemies at the same time. At that time, he would have to face other hostile gods. Moreover, compared to other gods, the god of Thunder's priesthood did not have an advantage. It would not be easy for him to develop and grow. He also needed to be careful of those hostile gods. Perhaps one day, he would be tricked by them. Su Len did not want to live such a life, so instead of becoming a god, it was better to become an astral wanderer. Collecting divinity would not only make him stronger, but it would also give him the essence of immortality. After resting in the room for a day, Su Len recovered to his best state, then he left the seclusion room. At that time, Hathaway was still in seclusion. She had gained a lot this time and needed some time to organize it. After coming to the astrology platform and eliminating the abomination, the ancient ruins had become sullen spoils of war. It could be said that it was the biggest gain besides the divinity. A well-preserved floating space tower that could fly and a secret realm. "Welcome back, Tower Master," the voice of the tower genie sounded. "Where are Alex and Karina?" Su Len looked around. There was no one on the astrology platform, and he did not know where the 2 of them had gone. "Ms. Alex and Ms. Karina are repairing the elemental pool," the tower genie said. As it spoke, it directly displayed a projection image. In the image, Alex and Karina were in the basement of the wizard tower. "It seems that they are not slacking off." Su Len nodded. "By the way, Tower Genie, did the former tower master leave any treasures or other magic props in this tower?" Su Len suddenly thought of something and asked. "I'm sorry, Tower Master." The previous Tower Master was arrested for violating the rules of the Supreme Arcane Parliament and conducting dangerous research. When the previous Tower Master was arrested, all his wealth and magic tools were taken away by the Supreme Arcane Parliament, so there is nothing left here, the Tower Genie said coldly. Sulen shook his head in disappointment. Sure enough, I was greedy. A floating space tower is worth at least hundreds of millions of kinnar. What else can I ask for? Soon, Sulen sorted out his thoughts and continued to ask the Tower Genie about the Wizard Tower and the Secret Realm. Tower Genie, how many golems are there in the Wizard Tower now? There is a golem legion in the Wizard Tower, including 2 diamond golems, 2 advanced magic construct golems, 500 steel golems, 1,000 rock golems. So many, I'm rich. After hearing the Tower Genie's words, Sulen's eyes turned into the shape of Kinnar City. A whole golem legion, how many Kinnar City would it take to produce this many golems? But before he could get excited, the Tower Genie's next words made Sulen's mood slowly sink. However, because of the lack of energy and maintenance, now the Golem Legion has been sealed. Many of the golems have aged and damaged, and some of them have lost the value of repair. Moreover, many of the golems that can fight were destroyed in the Tower Master's attack not long ago. Now about 10% of the golems in the Wizard Tower are intact. I knew it. Suddenly falling from heaven, Sulen's face was a little gloomy. 2 advanced magic construct golems have been damaged, but the diamond golems are intact. The advanced magic construct golems are damaged? How? Sulen asked in surprise. The Tower Master destroyed them himself. The Tower Genie's cold voice echoed in the astrology platform, and at the same time, a video was projected. It was the scene of Sulen attacking the Wizard Tower. 2 advanced golems that were obviously different from the steel golems were destroyed by Sulen and Hathaway. Okay. Seeing this scene, Sulen was a little embarrassed. Because the 2 advanced golems lacked energy and maintenance, one of them was directly destroyed by Hathaway's disintegrate spell. The item destroyed by the disintegrate spell would lose its magical effect, and coupled with the lack of maintenance, this golem had lost the value of repair. The other one was slightly better. It was destroyed by Sulen's lightning spear, and could be repaired. The 2 diamond golems were preserved because the Tower Genie had insufficient energy to activate the guardian golems, but they still needed to be repaired. After all, after such a long time without maintenance, many of the internal parts had aged. Chapter 558. Although the legendary golems were powerful, they also needed to be maintained on time. The Wizard Tower had reached such a state that even the internal energy supply of the Wizard Tower could not be guaranteed. Naturally, the legendary golems could only be abandoned. Although some protective measures were taken when they were sealed, it had been too long after all. After some inquiries, Sulen learned that the secret realm had been emptied by the ancient arcanists. When the abomination was discovered, it was too powerful for them to kill it, so they sealed the abomination. The secret realm that sealed the abomination was abandoned. Only the Enigma and the floating space tower were left behind to suppress it. The entire secret realm was basically an empty shell. The arcanists' plan was to seal it for thousands of years until the abomination weakened to a certain extent. Then, they would kill it. But they never expected that before the abomination weakened, the Arcane Kingdom would go to war with the gods. After the war, the Arcane Kingdom fell apart. The secret land and the abomination of the god in the secret land had long been forgotten. They couldn't even take care of themselves, so who would care about the abomination of the god? It was also because of the good quality of the seal left by the Arcane Kingdom that it hadn't completely collapsed after thousands of years. Otherwise, it would have caused a catastrophe. However, although everything there had been moved away, the ancient arcanists still left behind a lot of things, such as the virtual library. In the core of the Wizard Tower, there was a virtual library of the ancient arcanists, which stored a lot of knowledge from the era of the Arcane Kingdom. Although it wasn't the best, after all, the owner of the Wizard Tower was only a high-level legendary. He didn't have a floating space city, and he wasn't a great arcanist. The core knowledge of the era of the Arcane Kingdom, such as the floating space city, the neutron star golem, the element fusion reactor, the element annihilation technology, and so on, didn't exist. However, although there wasn't the most core knowledge, the knowledge stored there was still very precious. In the core of the Wizard Tower, there was a complete set of floating space tower construction technology, half-bit wall development technology, the magical particle railgun 2-V generation technology, Enigma weaving technology, the legendary golem technology, and so on. These technologies were not top-notch in the era of the Arcane Empire, but they were definitely top-notch in this era. Northern Town City was not as powerful as those old wizard organizations. Even though Sulan had opened a treasure chest and obtained a lot of powerful knowledge, it could only close the gap a little. However, with this virtual library, the Northern Wind Tower's knowledge was immediately filled up. They were not inferior to the most powerful wizard organizations in the world. The problem now was to absorb and fuse this knowledge as soon as possible. Only after absorbing and fusing this knowledge could this foundation be converted into strength. However, the most important thing right now was to repair the Wizard Tower as soon as possible. He checked the damage of the Wizard Tower from the Tower Genie. The most damaged part was the elemental pool. The energy circuit and rune engravings were also damaged. Some parts of the magic steel were severely rusted and needed to be replaced as soon as possible. Originally, if there was enough energy in the Wizard Tower would activate protection. These energy circuits were protected by mana and would not be damaged. Now, they could only replace them with new ones. Fortunately, the entire Wizard Tower was built with obsidian and was blessed with a permanent hardening spell. The structure of the entire Wizard Tower was strong enough. They only needed to repair the damaged parts to be able to use it again. A day later, Hathaway finally came out of the closed room. Seeing her in high spirits, it was obvious that she had fully recovered. "Hathaway, how do you feel?" Sulan asked with a smile. "Much better. The evil thoughts of the abomination have been cleaned up. I only knew about the power of the abomination from some records. After this encounter, I realized how terrible this monster is. Even if it has been sealed for thousands of years and its strength has fallen to the bottom, it is still so powerful. I can't imagine how powerful it is when it is in its heyday. No wonder it is called the Terminator of Civilization," Hathaway said with a look of lingering fear. Sulan smiled and said, "Powerful people leave behind many benefits. This time, we got 16 divinity crystals directly from the abomination. Together with the divinity on the god's corpse, it is enough to give all the divinity of a god with weak divine power." "So much?" Hathaway said in surprise. "That's right. With so much divinity, we must keep it a secret. If even a little bit of information is leaked, our northern town city will not be able to resist the churches of the gods," Sulan said with a serious expression. "Understood." Hathaway was shocked. She immediately understood that although the divinity harvested this time was rich, it could be the source of chaos if they were not careful. As for giving up, neither Hathaway nor Sulan had ever considered this point. Also, these divinities are contaminated with the chaotic consciousness of the abomination, Sulan continued. These chaotic consciousnesses must be completely removed before the divinity can be integrated. Also, you must be careful when integrating the divinity. You can't be greedy, I know. Hathaway made a face at Sulan. I was the one who told you about the research on divinity. Now you are lecturing me. I am reminding you to be careful. Sulan raised his hand and knocked on her head. By the way, Alex, Karina, and I have searched the ruins for the past 2 days. It is so clean that rats can run away. Sulan pursed his lips and said, when the Arcanists evacuated, they took away everything that could be taken away. I suspect that if they did not need the floating space tower and the enigmatic lock to suppress the abomination, this wizard tower would not have been preserved. As for those golems, they were deliberately left behind by the Arcanists to guard this place from being destroyed by others. Doesn't that mean that we not only cleaned up the mess of the Arcanists, but also didn't get any benefits and came here for nothing? Hathaway couldn't help but say, these Arcanists are too stingy. Come on, the floating space tower, the secret realm, the enigmatic lock, the god's corpse in the basement, and the golems downstairs. These are not benefits. Alex couldn't help but say. These are props to seal the abomination. They had to leave them behind. How can it be considered a reward? Moreover, the things here are basically broken, and we have to repair them ourselves. Hathaway said with dissatisfaction. That was Sulan's true teaching. If the Arcanists were still alive, Sulan would definitely ask them for benefits. It's not that there are no benefits. The Tower Genie also keeps a virtual library, which contains a lot of technical information and various magic knowledge from the Arcane Empire. Is there a floating space city? Hathaway asked excitedly. What do you think? Sulan looked at her as if she wanted to eat sh*t. It's the end of the month. She's rolling on the ground begging for monthly votes. The kind that can't be kicked away. Chapter 559. Inside the Wizard Tower, Sulan, Hathaway, Alex, and Karina were repairing the Wizard Tower. With Hathaway's help, the speed of the repair sped up a lot. Since there were no materials here, Sulan even went back to the northern town city to retrieve some of the materials stored there. On the way back, Sulan met the two monks again. They had not left and kept saying that they wanted to suppress the monsters in the ruins. How could Sulan let them go to the ruins? He directly rejected them. After sending the materials to the ruins, Sulan temporarily left. With Hathaway there, he did not need to worry about the ruins. He still needed to take charge of the construction of Deepwater City. During this time, the second batch of construction workers had already gone to Deepwater City. Other than that, the caravan of the northern town city had also gone to the southern countries to recruit craftsmen and sailors to try to build ships. There was also one more thing that he needed to do. He needed to use the hero recruitment token in his hand. After returning to the palace, Sulan took out the token and chose to use it. A light flashed. The hero recruitment token instantly lost its luster. Then, it turned into dust and fell from his hand. A breeze blew past, and it disappeared without a trace. Ding! The host has used the hero recruitment token. The effect of the hero recruitment token has been activated. In the next 3 days, 1 to 3 heroes will come to join you. Please accept them. The system's cold mechanical voice sounded in his ears. After hearing the system's reminder, Sulan called for the guards and told them to inform him if anyone came to join him. If he was not there, they had to treat those people well. When he came back, he would then go to the secret border. Sulan also obtained a nature crystal from killing the abomination of God. He planned to continue using it on the nature oak. After arriving at the secret border, Sulan went to the nature oak's small world with ease. After sensing Sulan's arrival, the nature oak gently shook its branches as if it was greeting Sulan. After not seeing each other for a while, the nature oak had grown taller, and its nature aura had become stronger. As soon as he arrived, Sulan saw a wooden house next to the nature oak. Just as Sulan was confused, Xanthi walked out of the wooden house. After seeing Sulan, she ran over excitedly. Sulan, you came to see me. Xanthi ran all the way to Sulan. Sulan reached out and hugged her and spun her around. Xanthi's light body was soft, and had a natural floral fragrance. After a while, Sulan put her down. Did you build this wooden house? Grandpa Tree built it for me, Xanthi said excitedly. Grandpa Tree? Sulan was a bit confused. Yes, that's him. Xanthi pointed at the nature oak. You can communicate with the tower? Sulan looked at Xanthi in surprise. Xanthi said shyly, not really, I can only feel some vague thoughts. When did you feel it? Sulan asked. For a while. Xanthi shook her little head. You've awakened your fairy bloodline? Sulan suddenly saw a pointed ear in Xanthi's light blonde hair. When did you awaken? I don't know. I just lived here for a while. That day, I suddenly felt Grandpa Tree. From that day on, I felt some changes in my body, Xanthi said as she hugged Sulan. After a while, my ears grew longer, and I felt that I was much stronger. Oh, I could also use spells. Saying this, Sandy waved her hand towards a plant beside her. Bloom. A green light flashed, and then something surprising happened. The plant immediately began to grow rapidly. In the blink of an eye, a flower bud appeared. Then, the flower bud grew rapidly and split open. Soon, a flower bloomed in front of them. Nature spells. Sullen's eyes lit up. Is this your awakened ability? Yes, I can also use some illusion spells. Xanthi said proudly. She looked as if she wanted to be praised. Great. Sulen smiled and rubbed her head. Oh, you can take care of plants, right? Yes, my ability can make plants grow better, reduce pests and diseases, and accelerate their growth. Xanthi nodded. Then from today onwards, you will be the chief planter of the botanical garden. Take some time to check out the magic herbs growing in this secret realm and give the winged ones some guidance, Sulen said happily. Me? Xanthi was so surprised that she could not close her mouth. I can't. I have never planted any magic herbs before. Moreover, those magic herbs are so precious. If they die in my hands, it's okay. There are many magic herbs. I will take some out for you to experiment. Besides, you have to believe in your talent and trust my judgment. Sulen said with a smile. Then. I will try. Xanthi nodded her little head. But if I make a mistake or break those magic herbs, you can't be angry. Don't worry, I won't be angry, Sulen said. Then, Sulen took out the nature crystal and used it on the nature oak tree in front of him. The light green divine power instantly merged with the nature oak tree. Then, the nature oak tree in front of them began to grow rapidly. The tree trunk became thicker and the whole nature oak tree continued to grow. In less than a minute, the nature oak tree in front of them had grown to a height of more than 60 meters. The branches and leaves were lush and the whole tree looked like a big green umbrella. The aura of nature in the surroundings became thicker and thicker. The surrounding plants grew rapidly in this aura. An aura of life surrounded this place. Did it level up? Sulen was surprised when he saw the changes in the nature oak tree in front of him. Sulen, Grandpa Big Tree asked me to tell you that he is grateful for your help. He has leveled up, Xanthi said happily. Sulen used Identify on the nature oak tree in front of him. Then, a message appeared in his mind. Wisdom Ancient Tree, a magical plant evolved from the nature oak tree. It is a unique plant in nature. It can give others nature spells. Living here can improve one's physique, increase one's lifespan, and purify one's bloodline. Skills, enlighten, all nature, purify, nature spells, etc. Has a low chance of producing the fountain of youth. Seeing this wisdom ancient tree, Sulen was very happy. With this tree, as long as he had time, he could create a group of druids. Seeing its abilities, Sulen planned to arrange for his two little maids to live here for a while. He believed that their elven bloodline would become thicker and their strength would increase. Chapter 560. Sulen was a little surprised by the wisdom tree's appearance, but it was also reasonable. After all, it had cost him 2 nature god crystals to complete its evolution. Looking at Xanthi's attributes, Xanthi had directly become a rank 1 creature after awakening her fairy bloodline. There were many types of fairies, but their strength was generally not high. For example, there was a fairy called a fairy that was about 20 centimeters in size. Their strength was generally at rank 1, and they were illusionary. Their attack power was very weak, and only the fairy queen was at rank 3. These fairies were not very strong, but because of their beautiful appearance and the fact that they could bring luck to people, they brought disaster to themselves. Back then, a large number of wizards had tried to capture these fairies. As a result, the remaining little fairies had to hide in places where no one would go. Although these fairies were not very strong, they were very good at hiding. In the forest, even if someone was 2 ranks higher than them, they would not be able to find them. Xanthi had awakened a kind of natural fairy bloodline. The strength of this fairy bloodline was at the 2nd rank. Only a few fairy queens could reach the 4th rank. The potential of this fairy bloodline was limited, but it could turn Xanthi from a weak woman without the strength to a first-rank warlock. This was already very good. The fairy bloodline's potential was limited, but Sulan had divinity. If there was no other way, he could let Xanthi absorb some divinity. Divinity was the most mystical power in the multiverse. It had the effect of turning something rotten into something magical. Breaking through the limits of a species was only one of its effects. The fairy bloodline was about the middle of the bloodline among the warlocks. It could not be compared to the dragon bloodline. However, this bloodline also had its benefits. For example, it had a very long lifespan. Fairies' lifespan was not less than elves, and fairies would not age. They were also very beautiful, so many female warlocks chose the fairy bloodline and became wizards. Sulan left Xanthi a 9 transformation golden pill and a set of books for her to learn from a wizard apprentice to an official wizard. He let her live and learn at the wisdom tree. This time, Sulan gave all the 9 turns golden pills he got to his women. A bottle of 5 pills was not enough. In the end, Hathaway and Chris were legends, so he didn't give them to them. Everyone else got 1 pill each. Sulan gave the time orb to Hathaway to use, and Sulan gave her a little divinity, but this required her to completely integrate the power of the Baylor. Sulan planned to keep the advanced soul crystal to build the advanced legendary golem. As for the god's blood and god's bones, Sulan and Hathaway had discussed and decided to upgrade the storm halberd. God's blood and god's bones could be used to create divine weapons, but even the lowest grade divine weapons were not easy to create. There were very few divine weapons in the multiverse. Other than the fact that some of the materials were precious, there was also the fact that they required the most important thing, divinity. Only by imbuing the item with divine power could it be called a divine artifact. Otherwise, it could only be considered a magical item. One had to know that divinity was directly related to the power of the gods. Very few gods would do this. Of course, there were also some powerful magical items that were called divine weapons. These magical items were far more powerful than other magical items, such as the Lich Ring. It was said that this item was a magical item made by a lich who had lived for an unknown period of time. Although it was not a divine weapon, the power it contained was no less than a divine weapon. For spellcasters, it was even more powerful than a divine weapon. Another point was that although divine weapons were very powerful, they also had restrictions. Generally speaking, divine weapons that belonged to a god had to be used by the god's faction. In order to upgrade the storm halberd to a divine weapon, Sulan had to imbue it with divinity. As for directly using the divinity of the abomination, the chaotic and evil divinity in it would make the weapon something that could only be used by the chaotic and evil faction. Therefore, the best way was to extract the divinity from the abomination. As for upgrading the divine weapon, Hathaway had only made a preliminary plan. It would take some time before it could be carried out. Sulan now needed to absorb the divinity left behind by the abomination. He now had 10 points of divinity in his body, and the power of divinity brought about a qualitative sublimation. First, it was in the physical aspect. His body had become stronger and had some characteristics of a divine creature. The second was the sublimation of his soul. His soul had become stronger and had a trace of immortal power. Sulan and Hathaway could only say that their research on divinity was average. According to the existing knowledge, the demigod Lich was the one who had the most in-depth research on divinity. Perhaps the ancient arcanists had a deeper understanding of divinity. After all, those arcanists had fought against the gods in the end. It was impossible for them not to study the power of the gods. Sulan planned to learn more about the power of divinity before making a divine weapon. When Sulan returned to Northern Town, a guard hurriedly came to report that 2 middle-aged men had come to join him. After hearing the guard's report, Sulan knew that these 2 men should be the heroes he had recruited with the hero recruitment token. Sulan was in a good mood as he had recruited 2 heroes with the token. Although he did not directly reach the maximum value, he was not so unlucky as to only recruit 1 hero. Sulan waited in the study for a while, and the servant came in with 2 middle-aged men. One of the 2 middle-aged men had a weather-beaten face. His hands and feet were thick, and his clothes were a little shabby. His brown hair was a little messy, and he had a thick beard. There was a thick layer of calluses between his thumb and index finger. There was also a scar on his face, which made him look unusually ferocious. The other man was the exact opposite. This man was clean and tidy, and his temperament was polite. Although his clothes were not luxurious, they were neatly tailored. His blonde hair was also carefully trimmed. He looked like a noble. "Hello, Your Majesty. I am Barbossa. I am willing to fight for you." "Hello, Your Majesty. I, Holland, am willing to serve you." The two men saluted after seeing Sulen. Sulen asked them to sit down, and at the same time, he asked the servant to bring some wine and drinks. At the same time, he checked their attributes. Unexpectedly, these two heroes were actually Tier 4 powerhouses. It should be known that powerhouses of this level would receive preferential treatment in any organization or country on the continent. The conditions Sulen gave were much worse than the conditions of other kings. One had to admit that the system recruitment token was powerful. After a simple conversation, Sulen learned some information about the two men. The man named Barbossa was actually a pirate captain. Because he went ashore to rest and resupply, he was betrayed and finally came to the northern wastelands. The other man, Holland, was a fallen noble. Because the old king died of illness, and the new king took the wrong side during the Ascension, he was openly and secretly suppressed. He could only leave and unknowingly came to Northern Town. Chapter 561. When he was in power, he did not show any mercy to his political enemies. Now that he had lost his power, his political enemies would naturally retaliate. And it would be 10 times or even 100 times the revenge. The Holland family was already in dire straits, and it was because of him that they were able to rise again. Now that he had lost his power, the family had fallen apart. If not for his strength, he would have escaped with his wife and children after seeing that the situation was not good. Grass would have grown on his grave. The arrival of these two heroes could be used to fill in the gaps in Deepwater City. The development of Deepwater City needed someone to preside over it. Holland was originally an assistant minister of the Kerbal Kingdom and was proficient in internal affairs. He was more than qualified to manage Deepwater City. Barbossa, on the other hand, could be the captain of the Deepwater port. As a pirate captain, he was proficient in navigation and knew the pirates' port and how to fight. Other than him, there was no other general in Northtown City who knew how to fight at sea. Moreover, although the sea merchants of this era were called merchants, they were actually part-time pirates who often robbed the ships of other countries at sea. Sulen was preparing to engage in maritime trade. A pirate captain would definitely save him a lot of trouble. After understanding the abilities of the two, Sulen announced that Barbossa would be the captain of the Deepwater Port's fleet, in charge of fleet trade and combating pirates, and Holland would be the governor of Deepwater City. After accepting their allegiance, Sulen also saw the degree of their loyalty. Barbossa's loyalty was only 75, while Holland's was 80. Although they were not as good as the other generals under Sulen's command, their loyalty would increase after some time. With 3 legendary powerhouses around, they naturally knew what to choose. Of course, they still had to give the necessary benefits. Kinnar could not be left out. After all, they were all sponsored partnerships. With Holland and Barbossa, the development of Deepwater City began to accelerate. Sulen directly handed the construction of Deepwater City to Holland and the work of the shipyard to Barbossa. Although Barbossa was a pirate captain, he also had some understanding of shipbuilding. After all, as pirates, they often had to repair their ships themselves. Especially after seizing a ship, they had to modify it. They did not have a shipyard to work for them, so they had to do it themselves. Barbossa was very familiar with the route of the Southern Sea. After all, he was a pirate in the Southern Sea before. He was also familiar with the route to the Eastern continent. After all, they also needed an identity to hide, and they often went to the Eastern Sea route. Sulen was preparing to open up the sea route to the Eastern continent, so he could give it to him. In addition to building a fleet, the most important thing was to have qualified sailors. The Kingdom of Florence was located inland, and it was very difficult to recruit sailors. They could only recruit some people who could swim for training. After all, the inland river and the sea were two completely different environments. Now, while building the ship, he had Barbossa train these people. If there was a Navy Army SEAL, Sulen could directly recruit people to train the Navy. Unfortunately, he had opened so many treasure chests, but he had not obtained a Navy Army SEAL. In order to strengthen the connection between Deepwater City and North Town, Sulen and Hathaway purposely set up a teleportation circle in Deepwater City. They then connected it to the teleportation circle in North Town so that the two places could be teleported directly. The planning of Deepwater City was very different from that of North Town. As a commercial port, it must be convenient for transportation. After a period of construction, some houses had been built in Deepwater City. Some of these houses were for workers to live in, and some were for warehouses to store materials. Because the city was close to the sea, the climate was humid, and it often rained here, so the city's drainage facilities must be strict. At the same time, the city's terrain must be the highest in the surrounding area. Sulen did not want the whole city to be flooded when the tide rose. In addition to these, because the city was designated as a commercial city, the houses inside were different from other cities. All the houses in Deepwater City had 2 or more floors. Usually, the first floor would be a shop, and the second floor would be a residence. The drainage around the residence also had to be planned, and the roads were all according to the standards of North Town. There were 5 roads in the city, one of which was directly connected to the port. The width of the road had also increased from 4 meters to 10 meters. Once the commercial road was successfully opened, Deepwater City would definitely become a trade hub. If they still planned according to the 4-meter road, it would be very congested. In order to prevent congestion, Sulen planned to use 2 roads, one out and one in. They would go out from the east gate of the city and enter from the north gate. This way, they could reduce congestion as much as possible. Deepwater City's harbor also needed to be built larger. Because Deepwater City was located on the southeast coast of the northern wilderness, the climate here was still somewhat cold. Although it wouldn't freeze in winter, there were often strong winds and waves, which led to the need to build a ring of breakwaters outside the harbor. In addition to the waterproof, Deepwater City also needed to build a lighthouse. As a port city, a lighthouse was indispensable. Chapter 562. The construction of Deepwater City proceeded in an orderly manner under Holland's command. Boulder led the army to clear out the various monsters around the city. Barbossa was leading a large group of newbies to practice swimming. Swimming in the sea and swimming in the river were 2 completely different experiences. The waves in the sea were strong, and those who had not been trained could be hit by a wave and never get back up again. Hurry up, you bunch of weaklings. Weren't you all proud before? How come you've all become soft-footed after a big wave? Barbossa held a bottle of rum in one hand and a rope in the other as he pointed at the sailors on the ship and scolded them. Although the ship was swaying, Barbossa was walking as if it was flat ground and did not sway at all. Get up, don't pretend to be dead. Hurry up and control the sail. If you don't want to go to the bottom of the sea to feed the fishes, then get up and control the ship immediately. The wind and waves rolled, and the entire sea was like a pot of boiling water. A small boat was rolling in the sea, and a 4-meter-tall wave hit it. The entire ship was immediately lifted up and plunged into the water. Just as the ship was about to sink to the bottom of the sea, it was lifted up by the sea in the next second. The ship rocked back and forth in the sea, but it remained standing. Soon, the wind and waves passed, and the sea returned to normal. Hurry up and get up. Look at your vomiting. Hurry up and clean the deck. Barbossa said as soon as the storm passed. The sailors on the ship were dizzy from the fall, and their vomit was everywhere. Then, under Barbossa's urging, the pale sailors endured the discomfort and cleaned up. Don't think that this is a small matter. When sailing at sea, you must ensure that the ship is clean. If you don't want to get sick, remember to maintain hygiene. Also, you must maintain balance at all times. The enemy will not let you go just because you fell. Alright, rookies, this is your first lesson after boarding the ship. More cruel training awaits you in the future. Cherish the good times now. I hope that I can still see you when it's over. Northern Wasteland, Northgard City. An endless stream of merchants entered the city in an orderly fashion. Although Northtown City had only been established for a few years, it had quickly developed into a bustling metropolis due to the local specialties and the continuous influx of immigrants. The Pearl of the Northern region was very famous in the human kingdoms. Almost every merchant knew about this new trading city. Merchants with stout faces could be seen bargaining everywhere. Occasionally, they would even say thank you to Lady Joaquin, and then use their silver tongue to get the other party to lower the price. Northern Battlefront City had become an important trade center in the north. The wine, paper, sugar, spices, and all kinds of enchanted materials and potions produced here were very popular on the continent. As long as they were transported back, they could make at least double the profit. Surprisingly, the fastest growing temple in Northern Town was neither the Church of Wisdom nor the Church of the Lord of Dawn, but the Church of the Lady of Wealth. This was the most prosperous trading city in the northern lands. Every day, a large number of merchants would come here. Almost all of the merchants who came here would go to the Temple of Wealth to pray that they could become rich. The merchants were the believers of the Lady of Wealth. Every transaction here was worth at least 1,000 kinnar. The monthly tax revenue of Northern Battlefront City now exceeded that of Cult City, an important city in the north. The merchants would go to the Temple of the Lady of Wealth to pray, and basically, they would offer some money. The last time Su Len went to the Temple of Wealth, the walls of the temple were actually gilded. It was said that this was just a basic practice of the Temple of Wealth. At the most extravagant time, they would gild the entire temple with a layer of gold. It was said that in the City of Wealth, the temple was not only gilded, but even the entire city would be painted with gold paint. The whole city looked golden. Of course, with the growth of wealth, there were countless filth hidden on the smooth surface of the City of Wealth. All kinds of darkness grew in the corners. Don't expect the nobles and officials to have much integrity. In their eyes, integrity and bottom line were far less tempting than the shiny kinnar. Even with the power of the Temple of Wealth's restriction, there were still unknown corpses in the sewers of the City of Wealth. But in Northern Battlefront City, this situation had been completely eliminated. Sullen's control of the city was amazing. He would never allow any gray corner in the city to compete with him for wealth and control of the city. A large number of soldiers patrolled the city every day. Anyone who violated the laws of Northern Battlefront City would be arrested. Prancing Horse Tavern. This was one of the best taverns in Northern Battlefront City. The owner of the tavern was very smart. He came here when Northern Battlefront City was developing, but he did not get a license to trade in white sugar. However, the merchant was not disappointed. Instead, he found another way to open a tavern here. He used his connections to buy a lot of beautiful female slaves from other cities to provide services for the merchants who came and went. The first time he ate crabs made him a lot of money. His Prancing Horse Tavern also became a place where many merchants lived. At this moment, a large group of drunkards, tourists, mercenaries, and adventurers were chatting and laughing loudly. On a small stage in the middle of the tavern, a few female slaves who were dressed very sparingly were posing. This was a reserved program in the tavern. The owner of the tavern was very good at doing business. Everyone liked free performances. As long as these people were aroused, they would spend money to enjoy it even if you didn't say anything. Next to them, a bard was looking at the stage with a depressed face. These LSP only cared about watching the performance. Who would order his songs? He was too careless. He originally thought that the Prancing Horse Tavern was popular and wanted to make a lot of money. In the end, no one asked him to sing. A dwarf with a loud voice was drinking a local specialty of vodka. He looked drunk, but he was still shouting that he wanted to arm wrestle with another dwarf. A halfling stood at a table not far away. Although he was dead drunk, he had just knocked down a thief who wanted to steal his wallet. This sword is 30 feet and 1 inch long. It weighs 2 pounds and 3 ounces. It was tempered into steel and quenched into a sharp edge. 3 years ago, I killed a gnoll in Neverwinter. A dwarf master forged it and gave it to me. At this time, a warrior pulled out the long sword with a clang. It was cold and the sword was shining. It was indeed a good sword. The noisy atmosphere suddenly became strangely quiet. Everyone's eyes were focused on him. The man's expression was cold, and there was a murderous look in his eyes. After looking around, he said coldly, "Only 30 kinnar." Chapter 563. After a moment of silence, there was a burst of laughter in the tavern. Sulen almost spat out the rum he just drank. A mercenary in the tavern laughed and said to the man, "I thought there was a guy who dared to make a move here, and I thought there would be a good show. In the end, this is what you showed us?" The others around him echoed. For a moment, the whole tavern was noisier than before. However, the adventurer looked indifferent and didn't care about it at all. He looked back and forth in the tavern, but no one was willing to buy it. "You don't know what's good for you." The adventurer sighed secretly. He casually pulled the long sword and sheathed it. Then, he sat back on the chair and looked at the dancers on the stage in the center of the tavern. Without a show to watch, the people in the tavern quickly forgot about this matter and began to drink again. Perhaps this matter would become a topic of conversation after drinking. Sulen came back from Deepwater City. The next morning, he went to the city hall to check that everything was normal. Then, he went to check that there were no problems with the workshops. In the afternoon, he deliberately came to the most popular tavern in the city to feel the atmosphere. Just as he was thinking about whether he should let Karina have a hot dance after returning to the palace at night, he saw this scene in front of him. He had to admit that this performance was really good. But to be honest, although he was a little far away, Sulen could still see that the long sword in the adventurer's hand was made of good materials and was well forged. It was indeed the work of a dwarf master. 30 kinnar was very generous. If it was in the blacksmith shop in the city, it would cost at least 70 or 80 kinnar. Sulen thought that this guy was quite interesting. After thinking for a while, Sulen asked someone to call him over. Soon, there were a few more people at Sulen's table. In addition to Sulen and the adventurer, the 2 dancers who were dancing on the stage just now were accompanying them. After that, this guy didn't hold back. He hugged a dancer and put his hands all over her body. He even wolfed down the food and drinks on the table, completely like a reincarnated hungry ghost. Sulen quietly watched him eat and flirt. When he was almost done, he asked, "That weapon isn't yours, is it?" "Yes. Of course it's mine." At this time, this adventurer did not have the image of an indifferent expert. His eyes were slightly narrowed, and he hugged the dancer next to him, his face like a pig. Hee, why would an adventurer sell his weapon? Sulen sneered. "This is my weapon. If I want to sell it, I'll sell it. What can you do about it?" Sulen glanced at him and said, "I don't care, but where did you get this weapon?" "Telepathy." A light flashed in Sulen's eyes, and in the next second, the adventurer told him everything he knew. It was very simple. This adventurer was just picking up scraps. He accidentally found 2 adventurers fighting. In the end, one of them died, and the other was seriously injured. The one who was seriously injured was not very lucky. He died from his injuries, so in the end, all those things fell into his hands. It was just that this guy didn't turn the windfall into his assets. Instead, he indulged in debauchery every day. In less than a month, he had spent most of the money. Therefore, he wanted to sell this weapon as well. Tonight, when he saw the performance of the dancers in the tavern, his brain was filled with lust, and he did what he did just now. Did the 2 people leave anything else? Sulen continued to ask. "There's also an iron box." "I can't open it," the man said with dull eyes. "Where is the iron box?" "At my place." Sulen looked around and waved his hand gently. The two dancers got up and left with dull eyes. Then he said to the man, "Where do you live? Take me there." "Yes." With that, the adventurer stood up from the chair and turned to walk out of the tavern. Su Luan followed him out, and the attendants who were responsible for the security work also appeared around him. The adventurer walked all the way out and soon came to a house for rent. These houses were cheap and the place was narrow, but they were clean and tidy. There were no smelly gutters or the like. They could be considered clean and tidy. After coming to this house, the adventurer took out an iron box from a stone brick under the bed. The box was tightly sealed, and it was impossible to tell where to open it. There was also a layer of protective magic light on it. On the outside of the box, there was also a rune circle. This was the opening circle of the box. After seeing it, Su Len instantly knew that it was stored in a mage's box. The things inside must be very valuable. Su Len didn't have a good way to remove this kind of seal. This kind of box was set with a protective device. If he tried to open it by force, the box would probably self-destruct, and the things inside would be destroyed. Although he couldn't open this magic box, it didn't mean that Hathaway couldn't. Although he was now a level 4 wizard, his knowledge was far from Hathaway's. Su Len played with the box. It was slightly heavy in his hand. There was no obvious mark on the box, only a hexagram circle. To be safe, he didn't try to open it. Instead, he brought it back to Hathaway for help. In the North Wind Tower, Su Len found Hathaway and handed the box to her. Hathaway looked at it carefully and said, "It is indeed a magic box, and it's well preserved. No one has opened it before. Can you open it?" Su Len asked. "Let me try," Hathaway said as she picked up the box. After about an hour, a light rose from the box. Then, with a soft crack, the box in front of them cracked open. Su Len opened the box. Other than a parchment scroll, there was also a letter. The parchment scroll was a map. Although the drawing was very rough, one could still tell that it was the general terrain of the northern wasteland. However, that wasn't the main point. There was an obvious mark on the map. There was a red dot on the map, and the word ruin was written next to it. It was obvious that this was a map of a ruin. That unlucky guy must have found a ruin by accident and wanted to sell it for a good price. Unfortunately, he met his enemy on the way back. Although he killed his enemy with his superb swordsmanship and strength, he was also badly injured. The medicine he brought with him was used up in the previous exploration. Without medicine, he was seriously injured. In the end, he followed in his enemy's footsteps. Then, the guy hiding in the corner took advantage of him. Chapter 564. There were many ruins left behind by the ancient arcanists in the northern wasteland. Most of them had been destroyed, leaving only broken walls behind. However, there were many ruins that still contained many precious items. Therefore, many adventurers who discovered a new ruin would sell it to other organizations if they were unable to explore it. Normally, the wizard organizations would be very interested in these ruins. They could sell them for a good price. Su Len checked the map. The ruins marked on it were a little far from the northern town. It was close to the ice field. Frost giants and white dragons lived there. The climate was cold, and it was covered in ice and snow. It was the worst place to live on the entire continent. If Su Len wanted to explore the ruins there, he had to be prepared for the possibility of encountering frost giants and white dragons. The northern town city was still exploring the ruins they had just acquired, so they could not spare too many people. He planned to send some people to investigate first before making his next move. The northern town city had 2 secret realms. They were a few hundred kilometers apart. Su Len planned to build a teleportation circle between them. In fact, compared to secret realms, Su Len was more interested in demi-planes. Secret realms were hidden using spatial techniques. They could not be separated from the main material world, and they could not be moved. Every secret realm was built based on the energy of the ley lines around it. There was a lot of ley line energy in the ground. The ley line energy was like the veins in the ground. Some places had more ley line energy, while others had less. There were also some meridians that crisscrossed and crisscrossed, forming earth vein energy nodes. Secret realms were built using these earth vein energy nodes. Of course, natural ley line energy nodes had a lot of mixed energy. They needed to be sorted out and guided from other ley line energy to complete the energy node. Only then could a secret realm be built. Many secret realms were built using several ley line energy nodes. As for demiplanes, they were private spaces that only legendary wizards could create. Of course, some lucky wizards could find demiplanes in the astral plane and use them for themselves. Floating space cities usually had their own half-bit wall. The various products of this half-bit wall were used to supply the floating space city. This allowed a floating space city to easily drift in the astral boundary for thousands of years without relying on external materials. Although adepts had the ability to create half-planes, very few of them would do so. They thought that the half-planes they created would be empty. Let alone resources, they wouldn't even have air, water, land, or gravity. They would have to collect and fill them up bit by bit. Under normal circumstances, such half-planes were used by legendary wizards as storage spaces. They relied on powerful magic to strengthen the space barrier as a storage warehouse. Since there was nothing here, there was no need to worry about things deteriorating or being damaged. In fact, legendary wizards already had some of the power of gods to some extent. Just like creating a half-plane, if a wizard wanted to, they could create a world. Of course, it would take a long time. Modifying a semiplane was a very complicated project. Unless it was done by the manpower of a large adept organization, it would take a legendary adept thousands of years to complete the task. If Su Len wanted to build a floating space city, the half-plane creation technology and transformation would also need to be put on the agenda. If he was lucky enough to find a half-plane in the astral plane, it would be great. Many wizards would attach their half-planes to a material plane. As for those that could grow on their own, it was completely impossible to find one. The demiplane would grow bit by bit after absorbing energy. It would grow by dozens of square meters every day. It might seem hard to notice, but after a year, 10 years, or 100 years of accumulation, it would become a rather large space. If it continued to grow, the demiplane would also have the chance to become a prime material plane. Northern Town City didn't have a half-plane now, but Hathaway had the spell to create one. If they couldn't find a suitable half-plane in the astral plane, they would have to create one themselves and then transform it. By then, they would be able to separate the two secret realms from the main material plane and fill them in. Your Majesty, the batch of magic would you ordered is here. In the study, a guard said respectfully. How much is here? Su Len put down the book and asked. The first batch is 150 square meters. All of them are magic red pine wood. They are all top quality wood. The guard said respectfully. Then let's go take a look. Su Len stood up and stretched. He then let the guard behind him put on his coat and walked out of the door. Soon, the group arrived at the warehouse where the goods were stored. There were two groups of soldiers standing guard outside the warehouse. There was another group of soldiers patrolling inside the warehouse. The warehouse was filled with white sugar, paper, and alcohol produced by the factories in Northern Town. The shipment of demonized red pine wood was also piled up here. The heavy door of the warehouse opened, and Su Len walked in first. As soon as he walked in, he saw the wood piled up not far away. Magic red pine wood was a kind of wood that had a nice fragrance. At this moment, the entire warehouse was filled with a nice fragrance. This kind of wood was hard and light. It had the ability to repel insects and moths. Its magic properties were also good. It was often used to make magic ships. Since Su Len was ready to open up a channel, he naturally had to build a magic ship. With a magic ship like this, the safety of the ships in Deepwater City could be guaranteed. Only then would the rebellious pirates be afraid. The Red Dragon Queen was able to control the entire Southern Sea. She occupied all the important channels and collected high taxes. Other than her own strength, she also had a powerful fleet made up of magic ships. This fleet's strength could easily sweep the entire Southern Sea. Even the three most powerful countries in the Southern Sea together wouldn't be able to defeat it. Don't think that this was an exaggeration. In fact, she had done this before. At that time, the three most powerful countries in the Southern Sea spent a lot of time and money building their navies. They also hired wizards to make magic ships. In the end, they formed a joint fleet with full confidence and prepared to destroy the Red Dragon Queen's fleet. In the end, they had the absolute advantage in numbers. The joint fleet of the three countries was destroyed in a naval battle. According to the records at that time, the entire sea was burning with the flames of hell. The corpses of the Sacred Alliance filled the sea. Countless sharks reveled in the water. That day, the crown fell from the hands of the Sacred Alliance. The whole world trembled under the dragon's wings that covered the sky. Chapter 565. Although Deepwater City did not intend to extravagantly build a magic fleet, a powerful magic ship was still a necessity. After processing, the enchanted red pine wood would be used as the main material for the magic ship. Sulen reached out and touched the wood in front of him, then used his energy to feel it. It was indeed a good material, and there was nothing wrong with it. Only then did he nod. This kind of magic wood was basically a military resource, and ordinary people had no way to buy it. The southern countries were especially strict about this kind of wood. After all, if pirates got their hands on this wood, although they could not cast spells on the ship, the wood itself could crush ordinary ships. Su Luan didn't produce enchanted red pine wood here. Instead, he bought it from other wizard organizations. Many wizard organizations would plant enchanted red pine wood in large quantities in the secret realm. Some could be used to make magic wands, and some could be sold in exchange for other resources. The most powerful magic ship in the Southern Sea was called the Red Dragon Queen. This ship was made of dragon blood wood. The body of a giant dragon would constantly release a kind of radiation energy to the surroundings. This radiation energy would change the surrounding environment and promote the development of creatures in the direction of dragonization. This kind of dragon blood wood was a kind of wood that grew near the nest of a giant dragon. The quality of the dragon blood wood was determined by the giant dragon that lived around it. The stronger the giant dragon was, the better the quality of the dragon blood wood. The dragon blood wood used by the Red Dragon Queen was grown around the nest of the Red Dragon Queen. This kind of wood was much better than the enchanted red pine wood Sulen used. In addition to the dragon blood wood, the Red Dragon Queen was also embedded with a large number of dragon scales. These dragon scales were shed by the Red Dragon Queen. Although they were not as strong as the ones on her body, their defense was still very high. The crew of this ship were all descendants of the Red Dragon Queen. It was this ship that defeated the alliance fleet of the three countries in one fell swoop. Then, other ships would surround the alliance fleet and completely send it to the bottom of the sea. In this era, not everyone could own a magic ship. Other than the various countries, only the major wizard organizations and some big nobles could afford to build one. Every few years, the major sorcerer organizations would recruit apprentices from all over the world. These ships were not to be touched unless you wanted to start a war with the sorcerer organization. Those great nobles would spend a lot of money to build a magic ship. The size of the ship was still very small, and it was usually used as the flagship of a caravan to protect the fleet. The magic ship that Sulen was going to build was not going to be stingy. It was built by legendary wizard Hathaway and Sulen. It was definitely going to be a very powerful ship. Due to the lack of sailors, they did not intend to use too many people on this ship. It would be a powerful magic ship. The sailboat and the ballistic cannons could be controlled by magic. If it was not for the lack of technical skills, he would even try to install the magic particle railgun on the ship. With one shot, no matter if it was the Red Dragon Queen, the Dawn Goddess, or the Queen Anne, they would all be destroyed. After checking that the wood was up to standard, Sulen directly sent them to the secret mirror. He planned to build a magic ship here. Hathaway, Alex, and Sulen came here. In addition to the wood in front of them, Sulen also prepared magic steel and other metals. These magic steel were used to make the keel of the magic ship. Sulen took out a blueprint. The magic ship was built according to this blueprint. Everyone divided up the work. Sulen was responsible for the keel, Alex was responsible for the sails and masts, Hathaway and Chris were responsible for the hull, and Karina was responsible for the special parts of the ship. After the division of labor was decided, everyone began to work. Sulen waved his hand, and a big hand completely made of lightning energy appeared out of thin air. Then, the big hand picked up the magic steel ingots piled on the ground. Powerful electric currents flashed with dazzling light. The originally hard magic steel ingots were quickly softened by the electric arcs and melted into a pile of liquid metal. Then, the molten liquid metal quickly changed into various shapes under Sulen's control. The magic ship was 56 meters long and 32 meters wide. The keel was 50 meters long and 26 meters wide. Sulen planned to make the keel of such a ship in one go. Powerful lightning energy surged out of his body. Pieces of magic steel ingots were melted and then merged according to the blueprint. Soon, a large mass of magic steel liquid floated in the air. After confirming that there was enough magic steel, Sulen began to control the liquid metal to quickly form it. Soon, a keel gradually took shape. After the keel was formed, the dazzling lightning energy slowly disappeared, and the magic steel liquid metal began to cool down. Magic steel was a metal with excellent magical conductivity. It was far more durable than ordinary steel. It was also much lighter than ordinary steel. At the same time, it was not too expensive to make. It was a good choice to make the keel of a ship. Of course, the keel was only half finished. After the cooling down, Sulen still needed to enchant it to increase its durability, reduce its weight, increase its resistance to corrosion, and increase its magic defense. At the same time, he also needed to create an energy channel. While Sulen was making the keel, the others were not idle. Hathaway took out her magic staff. With a flash of light, neatly arranged magic red pine wood floated in the air. Then, the wood was arranged in a picturesque disorder in the air. Wind blades appeared one after another. Then, these wind blades waved and cut the wood. The hard magic wood was quickly cut into neat materials. After the wood was cut, the planks began to be pieced together. Although there was a lot of wood, under Hathaway's control, the wood was quickly cut into standard parts. After Sulen finished the keel, the wood was quickly pieced together. The flying planks flew to the designated location, and a huge wooden sailboat was quickly completed from scratch. The masts that Alex had prepared earlier were also installed under her control. Soon, 3 huge masts were erected, and huge white sails and ropes began to be connected to the designated positions. The masts stood tall, and the double deck and the ballista were all in place. At the bow of the ship was the head of a dragon. Hathaway had carved it according to Onyxia's image. The slender body was like the hull of the ship. When the last plank was put in place, the ship went from nothing to complete in just a few hours. Of course, this was only the first step. The next step was to enchant the ship. Chapter 566. The task of enchantment was left to Hathaway. After all, the quality of the enchantment was directly proportional to the strength and skills of the enchantment user. Hathaway took out her magic staff and flew directly into the air. She gently tapped on the sails of the magic ship with her staff, and a gorgeous magic energy instantly wrapped the sails of the ship. Hathaway took out some magic gem powder and some arcane math powder. Then she gently blew, and the magic powder instantly flew up. These magic powders emitted colorful colors, and the surrounding space became dreamlike at this moment. Countless glittering magic powder quickly merged with the sails under the effect of magic, and the whole sails emitted a gorgeous luster. Lines of magic runes quickly took shape, and the colorful magic powder fused with the mysterious runes. After a long time, all the magic light dissipated, and the sail returned to its original appearance. Wind Elemental Sail. This is a special sail made of runic cloth and woven with thorium threads. The sorcerer has cast a wind elemental spell on it, allowing it to be blown by the wind no matter the time or the direction of the wind. Wind from all directions plus 25, fire and water resistance plus 27, smooth sailing plus 25, never wear and tear plus 22, weight reduction plus 23, wind and waves plus 22. Skills: call the wind and summon the rain, summon fog, animated rope. After enchanted with the animated rope, these ropes seem to have a life of their own. Serious work plus 25, orderly plus 23, double efficiency plus 24, fire and water resistance plus 23, coil plus 22, toughness plus 25, stretch and stretch plus 24, sail control plus 28, regeneration plus 25, dragon roar, ram indestructible plus 28, quick strike plus 22, rampage plus 25, damage plus 24. Seeing that Hathaway had finished casting the spell, Sulen used identification on the sails and ropes of the magic ship in front of him to check their attributes. It could be said that they completely exceeded his requirements. The wind elemental sail allowed the ship to sail freely in any direction of the wind. Whether it was against the wind or not, the sails would provide enough power for the ship. In addition to the sails, the animated ropes could be used to control the sails and carry out various tasks at the same time. They could replace the sailors and even attack when the enemy was engaged in boarding combat. A large number of ropes would suddenly shoot out and wrap around the enemy like pythons before strangling them to death. After completing the enchantments for the sails and ropes, Hathaway began to enchant the ship's hull. Hathaway took out a metal ingot, then directly summoned elemental fire and melted the entire metal ingot into liquid. After the impurities were removed from the liquid metal, the magic energy on it became even stronger. Hathaway gently waved her staff, and the liquid metal quickly covered the entire ship like a layer of thin film. Soon, the entire ship was wrapped in a layer of metal protection. Afterwards, one rune after another was quickly engraved on the hull. A large number of runes appeared on the hull like decorative patterns, and multicolored magic lights quickly fluttered. After a while, Hathaway finally finished engraving the runes on the hull. At this moment, the entire magic ship was emitting a strong elemental aura. Sulen cast an identification spell on the magic ship, and a large number of data appeared in front of his eyes. Magic creation, magic ship, unnamed, item type, animated magic ship, item description. This is a powerful warship. It was built with magic red pine wood as the raw material. After a legendary wizard enchanted it, this warship became a powerful magic warship. The power of magic allows it to sail in any sea. Its speed is faster and the hull is stronger. It has become a moving castle on the sea. Indestructible plus 25, break the waves plus 27, walk on level ground plus 23, water and fire resistance plus 25, steady as Mount Tai plus 23, fast movement plus 25, agile evasion plus 24, wave suppression plus 26, energy storage, space plus 22, skills, underwater navigation, charge, accelerated navigation, aim, animated life, summon water element. Equipment, wind element sail, animated rope, dragon roar, ram. Seeing the attributes of the magic ship, Sulen's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. This magic ship was unexpectedly powerful. Although he didn't test it on the sea, he could easily judge that this ship was the overlord of the sea. Hathaway slowly let out a sigh of relief, and her body, which had been floating in the air, slowly descended to the ground. Enchantment of the ship just now wasn't as difficult as casting a few legend spells. Although the mana consumption wasn't as high as legend spells, the amount of effort required wasn't low. Carving so many runes without any deviation wasn't an easy task. After Hathaway finished the ship's enchantment, Karina and Chrissy also finished building the other parts of the ship. Karina was responsible for the various supporting facilities of the ship, such as the rudder, operating panel, storage, compass, navigator, and so on. Chris was responsible for the ballista and other weapons. Chris gave the ballista demonic power. After hitting the enemy, the demonic power would attack the enemy like maggots corroding the bone. Ballista, a powerful weapon blessed with demonic power, can cause serious damage to the enemy. Demonic power plus 20, accuracy plus 20, quick reload plus 25, range plus 25, armor penetration plus 22, fire plus 25. Skills: rapid shooting, arrow rain, rapid shooting, increase attack speed by 100%. Lasts for 3 minutes. Arrow rain: at the cost of sacrificing the power of the ballista, fire a large number of arrows to cover an area. The arrows can be fire arrows or ordinary arrows. Red Dragon's Fury, flamethrower. After activation, it can spray high-temperature flames at the enemy in front of it. Demonic Power plus 22, area of effect plus 25, high-temperature burn plus 20, burn on water plus 22, poisonous smoke plus 25. Skills: Hellfire, flamethrower. Hellfire: because of the demonic power, the Red Dragon's Fury can summon hellfire when activated, causing great damage to the enemy. Flamethrower: accumulates power for 1 second and then suddenly explodes. Can double the range of the flamethrower. In addition to these equipment such as compasses, astrologers, and binoculars were also enchanted with various spells such as Fog Insight, Direction Guidance, and Eagle Eye. These equipment allowed the magic ship to deal with all kinds of situations. The magic ship was finally completed after everyone's joint efforts. The combat power of this ship could easily destroy a fleet. Hathaway cast life animate on the ship, and the magic ship had a basic consciousness. Sulen and Hathaway left their soul imprints on the magic ship. P.S. What's a good name for this ship? Chapter 567. On the blue sea, several seagulls were flying in the sky. On the surface of the sea, a huge ship was sailing through the wind and waves. Sulen was wearing a pirate captain's three-brimmed hat. He held a telescope in one hand and hugged Chris in the other. He was commanding the ship in high spirits. On the calm surface of the sea, the ship's sailing speed had reached 35 knots. If he used a skill, the speed could easily reach 50 knots. In this era, even magic ships couldn't reach such a high speed. Sulen even tried the weapons on the magic ship. Those ballistae could easily shoot 500 meters away. Under the operation of the animated ropes, they could shoot 6 times per minute. After activating rapid fire, the firing rate could be doubled, reaching an astonishing 12 bolts per minute. This magic ship had a total of 24 ballistae, which could still shoot 288 bolts per minute. Such a high firing rate could completely turn a ship into a hedgehog. Compared to the bolts, the flamethrower of the Red Dragon's Fury was more powerful. The range of the flamethrower was only 50 meters, but the surface area of the flamethrower was 1,500 square meters. Sulen tested it on an ordinary ship. In less than 10 minutes, the flamethrower completely ignited the entire ship. Moreover, the flame of the Red Dragon's Fury could burn on the surface of the sea. When it burned, it would release poisonous smoke. Its lethality was very strong. After speeding on the surface of the sea for a while, Sulen let the ship slow down. The entire magic ship didn't need sailors to operate it at all. Those animated ropes could complete all kinds of movements. Following Sulen's order, the magic ship suddenly shook slightly. Then the deck of the ship began to move. An invisible force appeared around the ship. The surrounding seawater began to enter the ship. The entire magic ship quickly sank to the bottom of the sea. In less than a minute, the ship disappeared from the surface of the sea. On the bottom of the sea, Sulen looked around. The bottom of the sea wasn't dark. A layer of light blue energy shield wrapped around the entire ship. The seawater was separated from the ship, and the surroundings exuded a layer of gloomy luster. From the magic ship, one could clearly see the surrounding seabed. In addition to separating the seawater, the energy layer around the ship also had a concealment function. From the outside, there was nothing in the seawater. The speed of the magic ship at the bottom of the sea was slower than on the surface, but it was more than enough for a sneak attack. At this moment, he was completely surrounded by light blue seawater. It was as if he was in a crystal palace. It was very beautiful. Sulen was overwhelmed with excitement. He pulled Chris here to play a game of two, and then let the boat float. After playing in the sea for almost a day, Sulen tested all the abilities of the magic ship, and then sailed the ship back. The only regret he had was that there was not even a single pirate ship in the surrounding sea, let alone a merchant ship. This made his idea of fighting a naval battle completely fail. After returning to the deepwater port, Sulen and Chris returned to the land. As for the magic ship, it directly sank to the bottom of the sea and slept. It would only wake up again when Sulen or Hathaway summoned it. This kind of sleep was also a way for it to accumulate energy. The magic ship was not equipped with an energy source like the elemental pool. After all, it would cost too much to move the elemental pool onto the ship, and it would be easily damaged. Therefore, Hathaway used another method, similar to a battery. The magic ship had a special conversion array that could absorb the energy in the sea, convert it into elemental energy, and store it. Usually, it would not consume energy when traveling normally. It would only consume energy when casting spells or in a state of battle. Under normal circumstances, the ship could fight for about 2 days when it was full of energy. When they arrived at Deepwater City, the whole city was in full swing construction. The shipyard on the island in the middle of the Red Sand River had been completed. This shipyard covered an area of 30,000 square meters and had a total of 6 docks. The shipyards of this era had not formed the kind of closed docks yet. Many of them were directly built by digging a pit. Sulen made a lot of improvements when the shipyard was built. The largest dock in this shipyard was 70 meters long, and it could build a merchant ship with a displacement of up to 2,000 tons. This kind of ship had a large cargo capacity and could carry a lot of food and water for long-distance voyages. It would take about a month to sail from the eastern continent to Deepwater City. If they went to a farther city, it would take even longer. There were not many islands along the way from here to the eastern continent, so it was necessary to prepare enough food and water. This kind of merchant ship with a displacement of 2,000 tons could transport 4 or 5 times more goods than ordinary sailing ships. The smallest of the 6 docks in the shipyard was only 30 meters long. It could build small merchant ships. In addition to these merchant ships, warships could also be built here. In fact, the difference between merchant ships and warships in this era was not too big. Many pirates drove modified armed merchant ships. There were often conflicts between pirates and navies. The navies could not rely on their ships to gain an absolute advantage. Sometimes, pirates would take the initiative to attack the navies. The biggest difference between a merchant ship and a warship was the shape of the ship. In order to transport more goods, a merchant ship would increase its width when it was built. On the other hand, a warship was different. In order to pursue the enemy at a faster speed, a warship was generally built to be more slender. Such warships were usually faster than merchant ships, but the armed merchant ships modified by the pirates were not slower than the warships. Another difference was that the wood used for warships was teak or other high-grade wood, which was rarely used by merchant ships. Warships made of wood such as teak were usually more sturdy. In naval battles in this era, rams were often used. Rams could be said to be the most powerful means of attack in this era, other than magic ships. Many times, a high-speed ship could rely on rams to directly break another ship in half. If the wood used for such a violent collision was not up to standard, it was likely to cause serious damage to the warship. The pirates' favorite way to fight was to jump ship. This kind of battle allowed them to better preserve their goods and ships. It was said that the pirates in the southern seas had used this method to seize many warships. Compared to the navy, pirates were even more insane. Under normal circumstances, pirates preferred to use human wave tactics. Often, there would be dozens or even hundreds of pirates on a pirate ship. Chapter 568. The shipyard on River Heart Island was currently building a warship and an armed merchant ship. The merchant ship was progressing faster. Most of the craftsmen were from Northern Town. They had only built inland watercraft before and had never built a ship before. In order to build the ship, Sulen specially hired some old craftsmen from the Southern Sea at a high price to guide them. Just like that, the framework of the shipyard was set up. After the two ships were completed, Sulen planned to form an exploration caravan to explore the sea route in the east. The trade route did not have to be developed after Deepwater City was built. In fact, as long as the port was completed, they could explore the trade route. While building, they could conduct trade. Sulen strolled around Riverheart Island. When he went to eat, he bumped into sailors who had just completed their sea training. These sailors all looked pale, their hair was messy, and their bodies were filled with a sour smell. It was obvious that these sailors had been tortured by Barbossa on the sea. Sulen had no objections to this at all. After all, he did not know how to train a navy. Barbossa was the only one in the entire Northwind Dukedom who knew how to train pirates. However, the definition of a navy and a pirate in this era was not so accurate. If they wore military uniforms and raised military flags, they were a navy. If they took off their uniforms and raised other flags, they were pirates. Now, almost half of the active pirates in the Southern Sea had an official background. Although the three southern countries had formed an alliance, they were always dirty in private. The three countries had always been competing, but they could not fall out with each other. Therefore, they had obtained a privateer license. With this license, pirates could rob merchant ships legally. Of course, privateers could not rob their own country's ships. The first country to issue a privateer license was the Tudor Kingdom. Originally, the Tudor Kingdom was far behind the Liberia Kingdom and the Netherlands Kingdom in terms of maritime trade. However, with the privateer license, the kingdom's maritime power developed rapidly and was now not inferior to the other two countries. The privateer license stipulated that half of the looted wealth had to be paid to the king. This way, the Tudor Kingdom did not have to spend a single cent of military expenditure to obtain a large number of troops and large amounts of money. After seeing this situation, the Liberia Kingdom and the Netherlands Kingdom also began to issue privateer licenses. In the end, pirate activities in the Southern Sea became rampant. If Deepwater City were to engage in maritime trade and open up trade routes, it wouldn't be long before these pirates would rush over like sharks smelling blood. In order to cope with the next challenge, Deepwater City's navy must be established as soon as possible. Of course, in the early stage, in order to help the weak navy of Deepwater City, Sulen would leave the Raging Dragon here to help them fight. Northern Wastelands, Northwind Tower. The astrology platform was filled with a powerful magic power. Hathaway's body had gathered a frightening amount of energy. A decaying, destructive, and crazy energy was constantly being extracted from the divinity crystal. This powerful negative energy could easily turn a person into a demon who would not shrink from any evil. The slightest carelessness would interfere with Hathaway's mind. Only after the divinity had been purified could she absorb it without any side effects. Beside Hathaway, a torrent of elemental energy was constantly purifying this evil energy. After about half an hour, the energy extracted from the divinity crystal in front of her was finally purified and restored to its original golden brilliance. Then the surrounding elemental energy slowly dissipated. Hathaway gently waved her hand, and the golden divinity began to integrate into her body. The golden energy turned into strands of silk and rushed into Hathaway's body. Because Hathaway was not a god, she could only slowly integrate the divinity. It was said that the gods could directly integrate the divinity into their bodies, unlike humans who integrated it bit by bit. After feeling the divinity integrate into her body, Hathaway's soul became stronger. After all the divinity in front of her had integrated into her body, her soul felt full. Hathaway then slowly dispersed the magic power around her body. Although the divinity had been cleansed, Hathaway's emotions were still affected during this period. As the divinity was stripped away, the faint golden energy in this part of the abomination's soul began to decrease. Hathaway did not absorb this soul energy. Although the quality of the abomination's soul energy was very high, the negative emotions in this soul were also very strong. Absorbing this energy was not worth the loss to Hathaway. With a snap of her fingers, Hathaway sealed the remaining soul energy. After extracting the divinity, the abomination's soul energy was an advanced legendary crystal. Hathaway and Sulen were very interested in the guardian statue in the ruins of the Wizard Tower. They planned to use the abomination's soul crystal to make one. Milky Way, check the pollution index on my body and soul. After absorbing the divinity of the abomination's divinity, Hathaway felt her body and soul and then said to the tower genie. Detecting the pollution index. Detection complete. A blue energy swept across Hathaway's body. The current pollution index on the Tower Master's body is 11.5%. Please take note, Tower Master. If the pollution index is too high, it will affect your magic power control and your promotion will also be affected. The chances of you losing control of your mind will increase. Please try not to take any potions during this period. Hathaway rubbed her head. She did not have a good way to clean up the pollution index on her body. She could only purify it bit by bit. The pollution caused by the ancient arcanists was even more serious. At that time, many places in the main material plane were seriously polluted. Normal life could not survive at all. This was also one of the fuses that led to the war between the gods and the arcane kingdom. The ancient arcanists later also studied ways to clean up the pollution. The results were so-so. Some seriously polluted areas were still uninhabitable. In this aspect, the Druids were better at cleaning up. The wisdom tree planted in Sullen's secret realm also had a purifying effect. Hathaway was going to live with the wisdom tree for a while. The purifying ability of the wisdom tree was very important to Sulen and the others. In addition to Hathaway, Alex and Karina had also fused with divinity once. Chris had just fused with the power of the Baylor and had not fully mastered it, so she could not fuse with divinity for the time being. Phyllis was not strong enough and her soul power was not strong enough. If she forcibly fused with divinity, her mind would be affected by the divinity, so she did not fuse with it for the time being. Fusing with divinity required at least the strength of Tier 4. Of course, if it was divinity given by other divine creatures, there was no such threshold, but very few divine creatures would do so. Chapter 569. North Wind Tower, Astrology Platform. With a flash of a teleportation spell, Sullen's figure appeared in the tower. Soon, the little maid Angela appeared. When she saw Sulen, she bowed slightly. Master, you're back. Sulen smiled and rubbed her little head. You're here today. Where's Hathaway? The half-elf maid Angela smiled. Sister Hathaway went to stay at the wisdom tree for a few days. She said that the pollution in her body was a bit high, so she went to purify it. Okay. Sulen nodded. He knew that Hathaway had just fused with the divinity. Who's at the wisdom tree now? Sister Hathaway, Sister Alex, Sister Karina, and Sister Xanthi. Sister Chris doesn't like to go to the wisdom tree, so she rarely goes there, Angela said. Chris was a succubus, a type of demon. She was a legendary demon and was somewhat resistant to natural divine power. If she was a normal demon, she wouldn't even go near the wisdom tree. Go prepare lunch. I'll go take a look at the mystery realm first. After Sulen ordered, he went straight to the mystery realm. It had only been half a month since he left the mystery realm. As soon as he arrived, he could feel the natural aura around him. The entire mystery realm was full of vitality. When he arrived at the botanical garden, it had become a sea of flowers. Colorful flowers bloomed around him. Unbelievable. These flowers should bloom at different times. Why are they blooming at the same time? Sulen looked around in surprise. For example, the magic violet bloomed in May. The magic datura bloomed in August to October. The tulips bloomed in April. Now, these flowers were all blooming. Before he could figure out why, Xanthi noticed him and jogged over. Sulen, you're back. Xanthi, what's with these flowers? Sulen pointed at the sea of flowers. This is one of Grandpa Tree's abilities. Within the range of its domain, all the flowers will bloom, Xanthi explained with a smile. All of them? Won't it affect these plants? Sulen asked in surprise. They won't. These plants will be the same as normal plants. They won't be affected. Sulen nodded. That's good. Did you plant all these flowers? That's right. I asked elder sister Alex for these. Her elder sister winged people helped me collect the seeds. Then, we planted them together. Look, this is a devil's snare, this is a Japanese rose, and this is a lilac. There are some over there that haven't been planted yet. Sandy pulled Sulen and said excitedly. Isn't it beautiful? Yes, it's like a dream garden. Sulen rubbed Sandy's head. By the way, come with me. Xanthe seemed to have thought of something all of a sudden. She pulled Sulen and ran in another direction. Soon, the two of them arrived at the empty space behind the sea of flowers. There were more than 10 square wooden boxes placed neatly on the empty space. There were also bees the size of a thumb flying around them. This is. Sulen looked at the beehives in front of him in surprise. Hee, what do you think? These are my bees. Sandy said proudly. These are the amethyst bees that I asked elder sister Karina to catch for me. The amethyst bee was a very poisonous bee. An ordinary amethyst bee was the size of an adult's thumb. Its sting was very painful. There was also poison on it that could cause paralysis and weakness. In the wild, even the dire bear wouldn't dare to steal the honey of the amethyst bees. These amethyst bees were very dangerous. The challenge level of a swarm of amethyst bees in the wild was around level 11. Without professional means and tools, even a grand knight would have to take a detour if they encountered a swarm of amethyst bees. If they were surrounded by the amethyst bees, they wouldn't be able to withstand it. These bees were very dangerous, but the honey of the amethyst bees was very good. The taste of the amethyst honey was sweet, sweeter than cane sugar. Also, the amethyst honey had a special effect. It could be used to detoxify, make magic potions, and of course, be consumed directly. The biggest effect of the amethyst honey was to slow down aging. The amethyst honey's price was usually 500 kinnar per 100 milliliters. Of course, this price was basically priceless. There was very little amethyst honey on the market. Basically, it would be bought as soon as it appeared. Only a few auction houses would sell it, but the price would be much higher than 500 kinnar. The effect of the amethyst honey was not constant. It was different from the flower honey collected by the amethyst bees. Normal flowers were naturally not as good as the flowers of magic plants. The amethyst bees in the wild mostly collected normal flowers. Only a part of it was from magic plants. However, the amethyst bees in front of Sulen's eyes were all from magic plants, so the effect was naturally stronger. Since the amethyst honey was so effective, of course, many people wanted to domesticate it. However, the amethyst bees were wild and hard to tame. Only a few wizard organizations had domesticated a few. Most of the time, they would set aside an area to breed the amethyst bees, and then forcibly collect the honey. You tamed these amethyst bees? Sulen asked as he looked at the amethyst bees flying around. Yeah, Sulen, look, these amethyst bees are very obedient. Sandy giggled, and then her body began to dance like a butterfly. The amethyst bees around her also began to dance with her. All the amethyst bees were obediently dancing with Sandy's fingers. This is your ability? Sulen looked at Sandy with surprise. Yeah, what do you think? Am I powerful? The little girl said with a proud face. Her expression was almost saying, praise me, praise me, praise me. Sandy, you're so powerful. Sulen nodded. Hee, Sister Alex, Sister Karina, and Sister Hathaway taught me this, Sandy giggled. They taught me how to control my own power, and then I learned how to tame these amethyst bees. By the way, Sulen, here's some amethyst royal jelly. I saved a jar for you. Sandy suddenly remembered something, and then she pulled Sulen to a beehive. She carefully opened the beehive, and an amethyst bee the size of an adult's fist was lying in the beehive, sucking on the honey. Sandy gently pointed her finger, and a strange power spread out from her body. She then took out a glass bottle and carefully took out the honey from the beehive. When the glass bottle was full, she closed the beehive. This is the amethyst queen bee's royal jelly. Because it's the amethyst queen bee's food, you can't take too much. If you want more, you'll have to wait until next month. Sandy then handed the glass bottle full of amethyst royal jelly to Sulen. Chapter 570. Sandy summoned water elements to wash her hands, and then stretched out her white and tender hand to dip some royal jelly from the glass jar and handed it to Sulen. She said with a sweet smile, "Fresh royal jelly. Others like it very much. Sulen, would you like to have a taste?" Looking at Sandy's white and tender hands and her expectant look, Sulen would not refuse her kindness. He licked the royal jelly on her fingers. The moment his tongue touched it, he tasted a hint of sweetness with a hint of sourness and floral fragrance. It was not as spicy as other royal jellies, so it tasted good. Seeing Sulen licking her fingers directly, Sandy blushed slightly. However, she recovered soon. "How's the taste? Do you like it?" "Great royal jelly." Sulen gave a thumbs up and said. Seeing Sulen's expression, Sandy also became happy. She said proudly, "The amethyst bees I cultivated and the amethyst bees' honey and royal jelly are the best. Oh, come and have a taste of the honey. Compared with royal jelly, honey tastes better." Sandy raised her head proudly and said, patting her chest. As she spoke, Sandy took out a jar of purple crystal honey from somewhere as if she was performing a magic trick. Sulen took over the jar and smelled it. There was a faint floral fragrance with a hint of sweetness, which was very attractive. He dipped his finger into the jar and put it into his mouth. A mellow floral fragrance with sweetness instantly filled his mouth. It was a feeling that made people satisfied from the bottom of their hearts. Sulen couldn't help but narrow his eyes and savor the taste. He could guarantee that this was definitely the best honey he had ever tasted since his previous life. The sweet honey had a hint of floral fragrance and a long aftertaste, which made people feel that they were in a sea of flowers. Even if other effects of the honey were ignored, it was the best honey only in terms of taste. "How is it? Is it delicious?" Sandy looked at Sulen expectantly. "It made me feel the taste of nature. It gave me a sense of happiness and satisfaction. It was great," Sulen said. "Hee, as long as you like it. I spent a lot of time getting these amethyst wasps to collect different flowers and make this honey according to a special ratio," Sandy said proudly. Sulen had a whole new level of respect for Sandy. Originally, he just wanted to raise a mascot. He didn't expect that Sandy would bring him a surprise. "Thank you for your hard work." The effect of royal jelly was better than honey. It was a very rare and precious medicinal material. Even if it was not mixed into a magic potion, it could slowly strengthen a person's physique and increase their lifespan through daily consumption. At the same time, it could speed up the effect of meditation and slow down aging. This was a hot commodity for most magi. Unfortunately, the production rate was even lower than the amethyst honey. Basically, it was digested as soon as it was produced, and very rarely would it be sold. Sulen used appraisal on the two jars in his hands, and a large amount of data appeared before his eyes. Item name, purple crystal honey. Quality, excellent. Description, honey carefully brewed by the amethyst wasps using the pollen of dozens of magical plants. It tastes sweet and has the effect of improving physique, slowing down aging, detoxifying, and increasing poison resistance. It's a rare honey. Amethyst honey, sweet and delicious plus 42, pleasant fragrance plus 37, detoxifying plus 34, aging plus 25, energy recovery plus 40, mana recovery plus 35. Note, long-term consumption will give you a weak poison resistance. More than 1 liter must be consumed continuously. Item name, amethyst royal jelly. Quality, excellent. Description, liquid secreted by the young amethyst wasps from various flowers collected by the young amethyst wasps. It is the food for the queen bee and also the food for the larvae. It has the effect of strengthening physique, slowing down aging, increasing lifespan, enhancing meditation, and many other effects. Amethyst Royal Jelly, strengthening physique plus 30, maximum 3 points of physique per person. Maximum physique is 35. More than 300 milliliters must be consumed continuously. Rapid growth plus 26, life increase plus 35, aging plus 35, permanent youth plus 35, energy recovery plus 50, mana recovery plus 45, meditation efficiency plus 30. Looking at the attributes of the amethyst honey and the amethyst royal jelly, the quality was not surprising. The price of this quality was directly doubled, and everyone was fighting over it. How much honey is produced? Sulen asked. Xanthi's small white hand supported her head. She thought for a while and said, there are a total of 10 amethyst wasps here. The production of honey is 120 liters per month. The royal jelly is less, only 30 liters. Of course, the number of amethyst wasps here has not reached saturation yet. If there is a need, we can continue to increase it. Looks like Xanthi is also a little rich lady, Sulen said with a smile. Let's go. Your sisters must be waiting anxiously. Sulen and Xanthi came to the center of the sea of flowers. In the middle of the sea of flowers was a 50-meter tall tree. This tree was naturally the wisdom ancient tree. As soon as he came here, the aura of nature around him became even stronger. In this environment, he also felt as if his body had been purified. The giant ancient tree was lush and green. It was like a giant umbrella. In the open space under the tree, there were a dozen treehouses of different shapes. As soon as Sulen appeared, a white figure rushed over. Shoo! The loud neigh of a horse sounded. An extraordinary horse appeared beside Sulen. It was his Pegasus. It lowered its head and rubbed against Sulen's body. Sulen reached out and rubbed the mane of the horse. He smiled and said, "You've gained a lot of weight recently." The Pegasus snorted at Sulen and excitedly circled around Sulen and Xanthi. The Pegasus had been living a much more comfortable life recently. It ran around happily every day. After Sulen brought it to the nature oak, it treated this place as its home. "Sulen, you're here." Alex greeted Sulen. "Come and try the afternoon tea that Sister Hathaway made. It's delicious." Hathaway and Karina smiled at him. At this time, they were sitting under the wisdom tree and chatting. There was a tea set on the coffee table next to them, and there were some cream biscuits and fruits on each of their seats. It was obvious that they were having a gathering here. Hathaway's afternoon tea. "I have to try it," Sulen said as he sat down on the empty seat next to him. He picked up a delicate teacup and poured a cup of black tea. The black tea in Northern Town was different from the black tea popular in Florence. There were no milk, sugar, or other ingredients in the black tea. It was just boiled water, and Hathaway added some mint leaves to taste. This kind of black tea was more in line with Sulen's habits. "Are you used to living here?" Sulen put down the teacup and asked. Hathaway stretched lazily, her loose wizard robe outlining an astonishing curve. "It's too comfortable, too comfortable. It's nice to stay here for a few days every month to relax, but staying here for a long time will make me lose my drive. You're too self-disciplined." Sulen shook his head and said helplessly. "Self-discipline is the only way I can go further on the path of arcana." Hathaway smiled. "But other than the comfort, the pollution index here is very good. I've only stayed here for a few days, and the pollution index on me has already decreased by half. It'll all be gone in 3 days at most." Sulen looked at Alex and said, "What do you think, Alex?" "It's great. I think this place can help me purify my bloodline," Alex said excitedly. "I'm already at the edge of becoming a legendary wizard. I think I can become a legendary wizard if I have more time. Alex, I think you should hurry up and increase your wizard rank. Legendary wizards are powerful, but your wizard rank is still too low," Hathaway suddenly reminded. "The power of your bloodline has a source. You can use it to increase your strength, but it's best not to rely on it too much." I know, Sister Hathaway. Alex nodded. She used to be a dedicated wizard, and her wizard rank was not that high. After listening to Hathaway's advice, she decided to focus on becoming a wizard. Alright, you guys can think about it yourselves, but I'll support you in learning all kinds of knowledge about wizards. It'll be very beneficial for you guys. Su Luan said to them, although the knowledge of wizards is very boring, and the spell models are a headache to look at, the benefits are beyond your imagination. Alright, I will. Alex slumped on the table like a deflated balloon. There's one more thing I want to ask you guys. Sulen put a cream biscuit in his mouth and swallowed it after a few chews. What is it? Hathaway asked strangely. The Furious Dragon is ready to go. I'm planning to build a fleet to go to the Eastern Continent. Who wants to go with me? Sulen said. The Eastern Continent? I want to take a look. I've only heard a lot about the Eastern Continent, and now I have a chance. Hathaway's eyes lit up when she heard Sulen was planning to go to the Eastern Continent. She was very interested in the idea. Sulen nodded, sure, we'll go together. He then looked at Alex and the others. I'm not going. A lot of kids have reached the boundary of evolution. I can't leave. Alex shook his head regretfully. Ever since they started living in the eagle's nest, some of the harpies had evolved into winged people every year. The evolution of the eagle's nest bloodline had been constantly changing the harpies. Sulen heard from Alex that the evolution of the harpies' bloodline had sped up after they suppressed their biological instincts. The winged people in Northern Town City had grown from 20 to 60. Perhaps in a few hundred years, the winged people would become a new race on the continent. Sulen was looking forward to this race. The Air Force in Northern Town City would be even more powerful. Chapter 571. In the Northern Wilderness. When Su Luan returned here again, the summer was gradually coming to an end. The summer in the Northern Wilderness was not hot. Perhaps because it was close to the north, it was far less hot than the south. The wheat planted outside the city had turned yellow in a large area. It was a golden scene outside the city of North Town. Needless to say, it was another good harvest. Sulen went to the city hall first to check how the work was going. It was almost time for the serfs to gain the status of free people. It was a very important day for the city. More than 90% of the residents in the city were serfs. Last year, when the first batch of serfs reached the end of their service, they gained the status of commoners. They owned land and houses and became real owners of property. It was a great stimulation for the other serfs. Therefore, in the following year, those serfs burst out with amazing enthusiasm. It was also on that day that Sulen's promise was not an empty lie. In order to gain a better life, those serfs burst out with amazing enthusiasm. Amazing changes had taken place in the city in the past year. The most obvious change was the farmland. Last year, there were 500,000 mu of farmland outside the city. However, only 1 year later, there were 800,000 mu of farmland outside the city. That was an extra 300,000 mu of farmland. It took them 4 or 5 years to cultivate the first 500,000 mu of farmland. Although there was a lack of manpower in the beginning and a large amount of manpower was used to build the city, it was still an amazing achievement to cultivate 300,000 mu of farmland in just 1 year. Last year, about 1,000 serfs were granted civilian status. At that time, they were granted more than 6,000 acres of land and houses. This year, the number of serfs increased by more than 10,000. Moreover, because they worked hard, their labor points were much higher than the previous batch of serfs who were freed. According to the calculation of the officials in the city hall, each serf could exchange for 8 mu of land. Therefore, the city needed to provide at least 80,000 mu of land. Of course, this land was not cultivated. Some of it had been cultivated, and some of it had not yet been. This way, the land could be quickly increased. This time, Sulen took out 40,000 mu of cultivated land and another 40,000 mu of barren land for them. Your Majesty. This is the list of the freed serfs and the land they will be given. A rather beautiful and mature female official smiled at Su Len and handed a document to Su Len. These female officials were actually the family members of the nobles who had been exiled to Northern Town. There were a lot of nobles who had been exiled here. Most of them were lazy. It could be said that 70% of them were rice worms. Su Len would not feed them and directly throw them to the farm. As for those who were capable, they were sent to work in various places. Compared to the men, many of the noblewomen were doing much better. They quickly adapted to the rules of Northgard City. Most of the noblewomen were literate and had received a certain degree of education. These women were assigned to various positions in Northwind Principality, such as female officials, clerks, and archivists. So far, they were doing quite well. Most of the work has been completed. There's still a small part left to check. Su Len flipped through the list and asked, "Where are the farmlands that will be given to them?" "It's all here," the female official said as she took out a map. Su Luen flipped through the map and found that all the farmlands around the northern town were marked, including the locations of all kinds of canals, water wheels, and wells. Su Len was checking to see if anyone was playing tricks on the land distribution this time. Su Len only said to distribute the land, but did not say whether it would be high-grade or low-grade farmlands. The difference was huge. If it was high-grade farmlands, not only would they have a higher yield after planting, but they would also have access to water nearby. The yield would be 2 to 3 times higher than the newly cultivated farmlands. The price of this kind of superior farmland was far higher than that of newly cultivated farmland. Who knew what kind of tricks those officials would play? Although these officials would go to prison every year for political training, there was no one who could be 100% sure about this kind of thing. In fact, this was a loophole that Su Len purposely left. He was using this method to fish and see if any of the officials would take the bait. As expected, after checking for a while, Su Len quickly found some high-grade farmlands that had been given out. He then compared them with the list. Su Len easily found out who it was. After discovering the problem, Su Len did not say anything. Instead, he directly notified the genie guards and asked them to continue the investigation. Looking at the genie guards who were a little panicked, Su Len just threw the information to them. They naturally knew how to deal with it. If they could not even do this well, Su Len would have to consider replacing them. After dealing with the matter, Su Len left the city hall. Northern Town was developing a little fast. Many functions of the departments had not been perfected yet. This time, he was here to knock on the officials of Northern Town. Back in the inner city, Su Luen's followers lived in the entire inner city. There were also several factories in the northern city, where outsiders would be discovered as soon as they entered. When Su Luen arrived, a large number of workers were busy, and some people were giving orders. After walking in, what appeared in front of him was a square box. These were the goods that were going to be shipped to Deepwater City. Su Len was going to open up a new route, so naturally, he had to bring the goods. This time, he prepared various specialties of Northern Town. Paper, sugar, some magic potions and magic items. There was also some wine, but not much. The main reason was the difference in diet between the East and the West. Su Len did not know if rum and vodka were suitable for the Eastern continent. After a few years of development, Northern Town had started to sell military supplies in addition to producing these things. For example, warhorses and weapons. With the centaurs, the warhorses produced in Northern Town were very popular in the human kingdoms. The warhorses produced here were some of the best in the entire Western continent. As for the weapons, the quality of Northern Town's weapons had skyrocketed after the dwarven blacksmiths were hired. Not only were they durable, but they were also sharp and tough. The price was not too high either. Some of the high-quality weapons were even enchanted. In this era, the weapons produced by the dwarves were equivalent to the high-end weapons produced by the big kingdoms in his previous life. As for the enchanted weapons, they were equivalent to the most advanced weapons, such as the Dong Feng Express and the F-22. The profits of the arms trade were very high. After all, how could the arms trade not make money? The countries in the south were very strict about the arms trade. Normal military weapons were restricted because of the rampant pirates. Many nobles were worried that the pirates would get their hands on weapons that were too good. As for the enchanted weapons, it was even more difficult. One or two of these weapons were fine, but Northern Town had no such restrictions. After all, these weapons were not used in the Northwind Principality or the Kingdom of Florence. Of course, Northern Town had strict restrictions on the sale of weapons locally. After all, Northern Town was located in the northern wasteland. There were too many goblins, orcs, and gnolls around. If these weapons fell into the hands of the goblins, it would be a threat to Northern Town. Sulen nodded after checking the goods again. Since they had the furious dragon with them, they could carry more goods. Therefore, they had to prepare all kinds of supplies. Hathaway was also here. She was also preparing the goods for the trade. At the same time, she was also recording the things she wanted to buy. Many of them were unique to the Eastern continent. She was planning to buy them in bulk. It would be great if we had a magic airship. Airship? You have the technology? Sulen raised his eyebrows. I'm missing some key information, Hathaway shrugged. The planet Sulen and the others were on was huge. It was many times the size of Earth. The distance between the Eastern continent and the Western continent was relatively close, but the Western continent was very far away from the other continents. It would take almost a year for them to travel back and forth with ships. It was also difficult to travel in the endless ocean with ships alone. In the shallow seas, there were not many monsters. However, in the deep seas, there were countless sea monsters. Many of these sea monsters were as strong as dragons. If an ordinary ship encountered these sea monsters, the ship would be destroyed. Hence, communication between these continents was usually done through magic airships or long-distance teleportation arrays. Long-distance teleportation circles could not transport large amounts of goods, so airships were the main trade tool between the continents. These magic airships were owned by a few large wizard organizations. They had completely monopolized the trade between the continents. They had made a lot of money by relying on these airships. Airships are not that difficult. You just need to cast a levitation spell or a space expansion spell. However, you still need to deal with the defensive rune circle and energy source, Hathaway explained. Another thing was the means of attack. Although airships could avoid the monsters in the ocean, they would sometimes encounter some monsters in the sky. Therefore, counterattacks were indispensable. Another thing was the energy source. An airship needed to consume a large amount of energy. Elemental pools could not be made on the airship. Therefore, it was crucial to make an energy source for the airship. In fact, airship technology first appeared in the early days of the Arcane Empire. It was phased out in the later days of the Arcane Empire. However, there were many gaps in the wizard civilization. Many of the skill trees lacked key points. It could not be helped. Although airship technology was phased out in the era of the Arcane Empire, the technology was still very good. It was cheap and cost-effective. Otherwise, the Arcane Empire would not have used it for so long. Chapter 572. Kingdom of Florence, City of San Filto. Phyllis was awakened by a ray of sunlight at dawn. She first opened her eyes, and then felt a sense of powerlessness coming from the corpse. The battle last night lasted until late at night. Even if she had awakened the dragon bloodline, she still could not bear it. The power of the plasma cannon was too strong. Fighting alone, she quickly threw away her armor and completely gave up resistance. Sulen seemed to feel something and woke up from his sleep. As soon as he opened his eyes, he saw Phyllis's flawless jade-like body seem to be glowing under the morning light. She looked lazy and sleepy, and there was still a touch of last night's lust between her eyebrows. After a night of release, Sulen stood up straight. However, considering Phyllis's ability to bear it, Sulen could only let her go for now. The velvet bed was very soft. Sulen stretched and got up from the bed. The maids outside the door seemed to have heard the movement inside. Soon, two pretty maids came in with clothes. After seeing Sulan's body, the two pretty faces blushed, but they still helped Sulan put on his clothes respectfully. The temperature in the room was suitable. Hathaway had set up a large rune circle around the entire palace. Not only could it protect the palace, but it could also adjust the temperature of the palace area. Sulan stretched, then yawned, and let the maids behind him put on his clothes one by one. The queen needs to continue to rest. You will guard the door later. Don't let anyone disturb her. By the way, remember to prepare breakfast for her. After a simple wash, Sulan ordered the two maids beside him. After giving the order, Sulan went to the dining room to have a simple breakfast. As the king of the Kingdom of Florence, he rarely lived in this kingdom. Although the Kingdom of Florence had been purged several times by Sulan, and a large number of nobles had been eliminated, there were still many rotten rules here, and there was a lot of resistance to reform. After all, these nobles had been living on this land for thousands of years. It was unrealistic to get rid of them all. Besides, there were gods in this world. If these nobles were forced into a corner and turned to the temple, Sulan's efforts would be in vain. After thousands of years of struggle, the human nobles finally reached a relative tacit understanding with the temple. That was, the temple would not interfere in the internal affairs of the country. In their words, the king belonged to the king, and the gods belonged to the gods. The king represented secular rights, while the gods retained the right to worship. However, if someone really wanted to uproot their roots, these nobles would not just sit there and do nothing. They would definitely go to the temple, and the temple would have an excuse to intervene in their internal affairs. At that time, there would be a lot of trouble. Sulan didn't have the power to suppress the shrine, but the shrine couldn't deal with Sulan either. In the end, they could only compromise, so Sulan didn't care much about the Kingdom of Florence. He only made requirements for the slums, the dark side of the city, and the appearance of the city. He also restricted the officials in power, and at the same time, reformed the tax collection. The interests of the nobles were also affected. After a series of attacks and exiles by Sulan, the nobles who refused to comply were already dead. The rest of the nobles could only hold their noses and accept it. Of course, this was also because these losses were within the acceptable range of those nobles. In the palace, Sulan was wearing a hunting suit and was about to go for a walk in the city. At this time, he suddenly saw the captain of the guards rushing over. Sulan frowned slightly and asked, "What happened?" The captain bowed slightly and replied, "Your Majesty, a group of refugees just arrived outside the city." The city hall asked if they should be stopped outside the city. Refugees? Sulan was a little surprised. It was almost the autumn harvest. Why would there be refugees at this time? Ask the city hall to send people to settle all the refugees outside the city. Although he didn't know the specific situation of these refugees, Sulan quickly issued an order: deal with them according to the refugee resettlement regulations. Yes. The captain said respectfully, then bowed and took 2 steps back to prepare to leave. Wait, go and find out where these refugees came from, Sulan suddenly said. Yes, Your Majesty. The captain turned and left. Soon, the sound of footsteps could be heard. Then, a burly man with a scar on his face walked in. He obviously had the blood of a barbarian. He was wearing a fine iron armor and didn't carry any weapons. When he saw Sulan, he immediately bowed and said, "Your Majesty, you were looking for me?" A group of refugees outside the city. Bring some people to maintain order. Let the refugees clean themselves and receive food according to the rules. Remember to kill anyone who dares to cause trouble and rob the food, Sulan said without raising his head. Yes, Your Majesty. The burly man bowed slightly, then turned and left. There was an effective way to deal with refugees in the northern city. First, the refugees would be isolated, disinfected, and cleaned. Then, they would be given food. When the food was distributed, all kinds of information about the refugees would be recorded and organized into a book. Then, the refugees would be allocated houses according to the book. Sulen wouldn't directly take care of these refugees. The most common way was to provide them with relief. This way, not only could the refugees find something to do, but they could also be used to build some infrastructure. When the refugees left, they would also be paid. It was killing 3 birds with 1 stone. At noon, the captain of the guards hurried over to report that the refugees had been settled. Your Majesty. Everything is settled? Where did these refugees come from? Sulen asked directly. I've asked clearly. They came from the city of Velatia in the north. Their city was attacked by a giant dragon. The dragon stole the treasures in the city and left. However, a group of barbarians from the north came and attacked the city. Because the city had just been attacked by the giant dragon, the barbarians easily took over the city. Barbarians from the north? Sulen immediately turned around and frowned slightly. A trace of anger appeared in his eyes. The barbarians from the north actually dared to attack my city. What are the surrounding nobles doing? Sulen didn't strip the nobles of their military power at the northern border. These nobles who were responsible for the invasion of the north had a strong military force. The barbarians who didn't even have metal weapons were no match for them. Even if Velatia city was attacked, the nobles could still easily drive the barbarians out with their strength. Now that there were so many refugees in Sanfilto city, it was obvious that the nobles didn't do their best. Sulen naturally knew the reason for this situation. It was obvious that the nobles were unhappy that Sulen's reforms had damaged their interests. Order the First Legion to head out and kill the northern barbarians as soon as possible. We'll reclaim Watya city. Oh, and bring the surrounding nobles' armies along as well. Teach them a lesson, Sulen said coldly. Yes, sir. The barbarians of the northern region were a general term that included the barbarians, the Vrykul, and other races. Because of the harsh environment and cold climate, these barbarians were usually tall and hairy. Many of them had the bloodline of the frost giants. Most of these barbarians had brain cramps. If a normal human's IQ was 12 points, then their IQ was at most 10 points. They were also stubborn and could be compared to dwarves. Because they were often cheated by southern merchants in their transactions, they were very unfriendly to the surrounding countries. Although these people were reckless, it wasn't difficult to deal with them. Sulen didn't care about the barbarians who attacked Velatia city. He was more interested in the dragon that dared to rob the city. A dragon that was active in the north and took the initiative to rob the city. This was most likely done by the white dragon of the Pentashade. Sulen estimated that a white dragon that could easily take down a city was at least in its prime. It might even be an old white dragon. Just because white dragons were the weakest of the Pentashade didn't mean that they were easy to deal with. In fact, white dragons were weak only relative to other Pentashade dragons. They were also very powerful to humans. White dragons that had entered adulthood were already legendary creatures. White dragons of this age were not as brainless as the previous white dragons. If it was an old white dragon, it would be even stronger. Its frost dragon breath could instantly freeze a person into an ice sculpture, and then shatter them into ice shards with a gentle tap. Dragons were born with dragon's aura. Human wave tactics were ineffective against them. Many people couldn't even stand under the dragon's aura. At the same time, they had tough dragon skin and dragon scales. Ordinary weapons couldn't even break through their skin. Many people used to think that white dragons were the weakest of the Pentashade dragons and looked down on them. When they really fought, they realized that even the weakest of the Pentashade dragons was still very dangerous. In addition, the white dragon's innate ability to cast spells was not friendly to adventurers at all. 99% of the adventurers who wanted to make a name for themselves by slaying dragons were killed by the dragons like bugs. Their weapons and armor also became the collection of the dragons. Sulen was very interested in dragons. Slaying dragons not only had extraordinary significance and fame, but also represented amazing returns. Moreover, this was a white dragon that had just robbed an entire city. Other than the white dragon's treasure, the most important thing was the white dragon's body materials. From its blood, dragon meat, dragon scales, dragon horns, claws, dragon skin, and even dragon crystals, these were all precious magic materials. It was not impossible to create 1 or 2 legendary magic items from a dragon's body. There were many Euron species in the northern wastelands, but there weren't many pure-blood dragons. White dragons were also rare. They were mainly distributed in the depths of the glacial mountains and the cold islands overseas. This time, the white dragon attacked the city of Velacia. Based on the dragon's habits, it was very likely that its nest was near the city. Dragons rarely strayed far from their nests. This white dragon had most likely just moved its nest here. Chapter 573. A white dragon that had migrated to the northern wastelands. This was good news for Sulen. If the dragon had lived in the depths of the glaciers, Sulen would have had a hard time finding it. However, if the dragon had come to the northern wastelands, it would be much easier to slay it. The problem now was that the northern wastelands was so vast with so many mountain ranges. Where could the dragon's lair be? A white dragon's hunting range was very wide. Usually, a giant dragon's hunting range would be centered around its lair. It would not be easy to find the dragon's lair in such a large area. Sulen tapped his fingers rhythmically on the table. He was thinking as he listened to the guard's explanation. Do any of the refugees know where the dragon's lair is? Sulen asked. According to the news from the refugees, the dragon is flying northeast. I think its nest should be in the northeast. The guard captain said respectfully. Northeast. Sulen closed his eyes for a moment. He opened the system map and found the location of Velacia City. He then began to look for a suitable location for the dragon's lair on the strategic map. There were many mountain ranges to the north of Velacia City. The Granwell mountain range was to the northeast. This mountain range was not big and was part of the Sierra de Lotus. The Ganders mountain range was to the northwest of Velacia City. There was also the Helbo mountain range further north. If the white dragon had really flown northeast, then the Granwell mountain range was the most likely place to be the dragon's lair. Of course, it could also be the Helbo mountain range. These northern mountain ranges were basically covered in ice and snow. Normal people would not be able to get close to them at all. It would not be easy to find the exact location of the dragon's lair. The next day, the First Legion of San Filto City had finished its preparations and was ready to set off at any time. After bidding farewell to Phyllis, Suluan led the army out of San Filto City and rushed towards Watia City. Velacia City was about 700 kilometers away from San Filto City. They would have to pass by several cities along the way, so the First Legion did not need to prepare too much food. They only needed to bring some food for the journey and buy the rest from the cities. When they arrived at these cities, Sulen could clearly see the temporary residences outside the cities. These temporary residences were filled with refugees. Not all of the refugees from Watia City had rushed to the capital. Many of them were scattered to other cities, and only a portion of them made it to the capital. It had been at least a week since the fall of Velacia, but Sulen had only just received the news. Sulen knew very well that there was something fishy going on. It was nothing more than the work of the nobles. Sulen had secretly made up his mind to increase the scale of the brocade guard when he returned. Before this, Sulen had always let the embroidered uniform guards develop in the southern provinces. At that time, the northern provinces did not have much resistance to Sulen, so they did not pay much attention to the northern provinces. Many northern cities did not have embroidered uniform guards. Now, it seemed that they had been too lenient on them. The embroidered uniform guards and Eagle's Nest had to be put on the agenda as soon as possible to monitor all the provinces in the north. It took 10 days for the army to travel from San Filto to Watia City. Nothing happened along the way. Finally, on the 10th day, Sullen's army arrived at Watia City. However, unlike what he had expected, the northern barbarians had already abandoned the city and left. At that moment, Watia City looked like a ghost town. Broken walls were everywhere in the city, and one of the city gates had collapsed. The city was in a mess, as if it had been raided by the Japanese. The city gates had been torn down, and there were a few stray dogs running around in the city. If it had not been for the words of Watya City on the city walls, Su Len would have thought that he had arrived at the ruins. Seeing the situation, Su Len immediately gave the order to set up camp, and then sent people to search the city. At the same time, he began to gather the refugees. At its peak, Watya City had a permanent population of more than 50,000 people, and was one of the largest cities in the north. The city belonged to the royal family, and was not infested by the nobles. Therefore, Su Len had to spend a lot of money to repair the city after it was destroyed. With the arrival of the army, Watya City began to recover. Coincidentally, Su Len was not satisfied with the city's planning, and began to make changes. While repairing the city, he sent people to gather the refugees. After Watya City fell, some people did not escape, but hid in the wilderness. Now that the king's army had arrived, these people began to return. Su Len also began to ask the refugees about the dragon, and where the northern barbarians had retreated. Su Len was not the kind of person who would take a beating without retaliating. He would not let the northern barbarians who had broken into his city and pillaged it. Many scouts were sent out to search. In the next few days, Su Len received a lot of information. Because the northern barbarians had taken a lot of resources with them when they retreated, they left behind a lot of traces. The scouts were able to find them easily by following the traces. The northern barbarians had brought a lot of spoils back to Gander's mountains in the northwest. What surprised Su Len even more was that the scouts had found traces of the white dragon while they were hiding. What did you say? The white dragon's lair is in Gander's mountains? Su Len looked at the scout in front of him in surprise. Yes, your majesty. When I was following the northern barbarians, I found the white dragon. The white dragon was hunting when it was discovered. After it was done, it brought its prey back to Gander's mountains. Su Len's expression darkened. What a cunning dragon, he cursed in his mind. There wasn't much information from the refugees. Almost all of them said that the white dragon was heading towards the northeast. However, the truth was that the white dragon's lair was in another direction. The white dragon had purposely flown northeast to mislead the others so that they would not be able to find the dragon's lair. After figuring out the situation, Su Len left the city of Valencia and headed for the Gander's mountains. This time, he was looking for the white dragon's whereabouts and killing it. With the help of the strategic map, Su Len had a clear view of his surroundings. He planned to find the white dragon's exact location first before killing it. There were a dozen mountains around Gander's mountains. There could be a white dragon on any one of them. The mountains were not very big. Some were steep, while others were as low as mounds. However, there were a few mountains that were very tall. Su Len also noticed that the environment was a little strange. There was a mountain in the south that was actually a volcano. When Su Len went to check it out, he found that it was a dormant volcano that was far from erupting. Volcanoes were very attractive to dragons. However, only red dragons like to build their lair in volcanoes. White dragons did not like this kind of environment. Su Len did not understand why a white dragon would build its lair in such a place. Su Len slowly approached the place. There was another mountain near the volcano. Su Len finally found some clues on the mountain. As soon as he arrived at the mountain, Su Len realized that something was wrong. The reason was simple. There were very few animals here. The entire mountain was very quiet. There were not many birds in the dense forest. Under normal circumstances, there should be many animals living here. Then, birds would like to build their nests here. But now, it seemed that there was nothing here. Animals were far more sensitive to auras and danger than humans. Since there were so few animals here, it could only mean one thing. There should be a terrifying creature nearby, most likely a dragon. The dragon's natural aura would drive away the animals around it. Any creature that got close to it would have to go through a test of will to not be affected. Otherwise, they would be shrouded in fear and shock. The dragon's aura would drive away other creatures near the dragon's lair. Other creatures would not dare to get close unless they were enslaved servants. There did not seem to be any animals or birds here. It was probably because the dragons flew by from time to time, scaring the animals away. At the same time, he also found the tribe of the northern barbarians. Sulan did not expect that the barbarians lived here too. After getting the information, Sulan did not rush to attack. Instead, he brought a part of his army. There were many people in the tribe. Since they dared to attack the city of Velatia, they naturally had to pay the price. Sulan did not let the army attack when they arrived at the outskirts of the tribe. This place was not far from the dragon's lair. If a battle broke out, the white dragon would be easily alerted. If the white dragon ran away, it would be difficult to catch it. Sulan let the army lie in ambush, then prepared to go around the tribe and continue up the mountain. He planned to deal with the white dragon first. After he dealt with the dragon, the army hidden below could then attack. Just as Sulan was about to go around the tribe, he suddenly realized that the barbarians were worshipping the white dragon. Many of the barbarians had signs of dragonization. Sulan even found a few dragon descendants. The dragon must have used its power to turn the barbarians into dragon descendants. The dragon could bestow power to its followers. Generally speaking, the more dragon descendants there were, the more powerful the dragon would be. Sulan observed carefully just now. There were 3 small groups of dragon descendants in the camp. There were some that Sulan did not see, but there were probably more of them. With so many dragon descendants, this white dragon might have broken through its prime and entered old age. An old white dragon. Needless to say, it was very powerful. Moreover, an old white dragon's intelligence was not inferior to that of other dragons. Sulan needed a perfect plan before he could act. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.